in the last episode, we had Francie's dad, Johnny. He passed away right around Christmas, so that was kind of depressing. And also, I think they missed their birthdays and whatever. A lot happened over Christmas, but mostly, Dad, Johnny passed away. So I think that we are in the story. We're right after Christmas, which is very timely, actually, right now. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 38. Just before Christmas vacation ended, Francie told Mama that she wasn't going back to school. "Don't you like school?" Mama asked. "Yes, I do, but I'm 14 now and I can get my working papers easy." "Why do you want to go to work?" "To help out." "No, Francie, I want you to go back to school and graduate. It's only a few more months." "June will be here before you know it. You can get your working papers for the summer. Maybe Neely too. But you're both going to high school in the fall, so forget working papers and go back to school." "But Mama, how will we get along till summer?" "We'll manage." Katie was not as confident as she sounded. She missed Johnny in more ways than one. Johnny had never worked steadily, but there had been the unexpected Saturday or Sunday night job with the $3 it brought in. Then, too, when things got too terrible, Johnny had had a way of pulling himself together for a little while to get them over the bad places. But now there was no Johnny. Katie took stock. The rent was paid as long as she could keep those 3 tenements clean. There was $1.50 a week from Neely's paper route that would keep them in coal if they used a fire only at night. But wait, the 20 cents weekly insurance premium had to come out of that. Katie was insured for $0.10 a week and each of the children for a nickel. Well, a bit less coal and a little earlier to bed would take care of that. Clothes? Not to be thought of. Lucky Francie had those new shoes and Neely the suit. The big question then was food. Maybe Mrs. McGarity would let her do the washing again. That would be $1 a week. Then she'd get a few outside cleaning jobs. Yes, they'd get along somehow. They got through to the end of March. By that time, Katie was unwieldy. The baby was due in May. The ladies for whom she worked winced and looked away as they saw her, big with child, standing at the ironing board in their kitchens, or saw her in an awkward, sprawling position on her hands and knees scrubbing their floors. They had to help her out of pity. Soon they realized that they were paying a cleaning woman and doing most of the work themselves anyhow. So one after another, they told her they didn't need her anymore. A day came when Katie didn't have the 20 cents for the insurance collector. He was an old friend of the Romillys and knew Katie's circumstances. "I'd hate to see your policies lapse, Mrs. Nolan, especially after you kept them up all these years." "You wouldn't lapse me just because I got a little behind in my payments." "I wouldn't, but the company would. Look, why don't you cash in the children's policies?" "I didn't know you could do that." "Few people know. They stop paying premiums and the company keeps Mom. Time passes and the company just keeps the money already paid in. I'd lose my job if they knew I told you about this, but here's how I look at it. I insured your father and mother and all you Romilly girls and your husbands and children, and I don't know, but I carried so many messages back and forth among you about birth and sickness and death that I feel like part of the family." "We couldn't do without you," said Katie. "Here's what you do, Mrs. Nolan. Cash in your children's policies, but keep your own. If anything happens to one of the children, God forbid, you could manage to get them buried. Whereas if something happened to you, also God forbid, they couldn't get you buried without insurance money, now could they?" "No, they couldn't. I must keep my own policy up. I wouldn't want to be buried as a pauper in Potter's Field. That's something they could never rise above, neither they nor their children, nor their children's children. So I'll keep my policy and take your advice about the children's. Tell me what I have to do." The $25 that Katie got for the 2 policies got them through until the end of April. In 5 more weeks, the child would be born. In 8 more weeks, Francie and Neely would graduate from grade school. There were those 8 weeks to be gotten through somehow. The 3 Romilly sisters sat around Katie's kitchen table in conference. "I'd help if I could," said Evie, "but you know, Will's not been right since the horse kicked him. He's fresh to the boss and doesn't get along with the men, and it's gotten so that not a horse will go out with him. They put him on stable work, sweeping out manure and dumping broken bottles. They cut him to 18 a week, and that doesn't go far with 3 children. I'm looking for odd cleaning jobs myself. If I could think of some way, began Sissy. No, said Katie firmly. You're doing enough by taking Mother to live with you. That's right, said Evie. Katie and I used to worry about her living alone in one room and going out cleaning to make a few pennies. Mother's no expense and no trouble, said Sissy. And my John don't mind having her around. Of course, he only earns 20 a week, and now there's the baby. I wanted to get my old job back, but Mother's too old to take care of baby and the house. She's 83 now. I could work, but I'd have to hire somebody to look after Mother and the baby. If I had a job, I could help you out, Katie. You just can't do it, Sissy. There's no way, said Katie. There's only one thing to do, said Evie. Take Francie out of school and let her get working papers. But I want her to graduate. My children will be the first ones in the Nolan family to get diplomas. You can't eat a diploma, said Evie. Haven't you any men friends who could help you? Asked Sissy. You're a very pretty woman, you know. Or will be when she gets her shape back again, put in Evie. Katie thought briefly of Sergeant McShane. No, she said, I have no men friends. There's always been Johnny and no one else. I guess Evie's right then, decided Sissy. I hate to say it, but you've got to put Francie to work. Once she leaves grammar school without graduating, she'll never be able to get into high school, protested Katie. Well, sighed Evie, then there's always the Catholic charities. When the time comes, said Katie quietly, that we have to take charity baskets, I'll plug up the doors and windows and wait until the children are sound asleep and then turn on every gas jet in the house. Don't talk like that, said Evie sharply. You want to live, don't you? Yes, but I want to live for something. I don't want to live to get charity food, to give me enough strength to go back and get more charity food. Then it comes back to this again, said Evie. Francie's got to get out and work. It's got to be Francie, because Neely is only 13 and they won't give him his working papers. Sissy put her hand on Katie's arm. It won't be so terrible. Francie's smart and reads a lot, and that girl will get herself educated somehow. Evie stood up. Look, we've got to go. She put a 50-cent piece on the table. Anticipating Katie's refusal, she spoke belligerently. And don't think that's a present. I expect to be paid back someday. Katie smiled. You needn't holler so. I don't mind taking money from my sister. Sissy took a shortcut. As she leaned over to kiss Katie's cheek in goodbye, she slipped a dollar bill in her apron pocket. If you need me, she said, send for me, and I'll come, even if it's in the middle of the night. But send Neely. It's not safe for a girl to walk through those dark streets past the coal yards. Katie sat alone at the kitchen table far into the night. I need 2 months. Just 2 months, she thought. Dear God, give me 2 months. It's such a little time. By that time, my baby will be born and I'll be well again. By that time, the children will be graduated from public school. When I'm boss of my own mind and my own body, I don't need to ask you for anything. But now my body is boss over me and I've got to ask you for help. Just 2 months. 2 months. She waited for that warm glow that meant that she had established communication with her God. There was no glow. She tried again. Holy Mary, Mother of Jesus, you know how it is. You had children. Holy Mary. She waited. There was nothing. She placed Sissy's dollar and Evie's 50-cent piece on the table. That will get us through 3 more days, she thought. After that? Not aware of what she did, she whispered, Johnny, wherever you are, pull yourself together just one more time. One more time. She waited again, and this time the glow came. And so it happened that Johnny helped them. There's a lot of roasty flavor on this first steep of this tea. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. I wonder how Johnny helped them. I'm curious. Okay, moving on. McGarity, the saloon keeper, couldn't get Johnny out of his mind. Not that McGarity's conscience bothered him. No, nothing like that. He didn't force men to come into his saloon. Aside from keeping the door hinges so well oiled that the slightest touch made them swing open easily, he offered no more inducements than other saloon keepers. His free lunch was no better than theirs, and there was no beguiling entertainment other than that spontaneously contributed by his customers. No, it wasn't his conscience. "Oh, hey, Cyril, sorry I missed you. Welcome in." "Yeah, I'll show you the cup after I empty it out the next time." "Yeah, sorry I missed your chat there." He missed Johnny, that was it, and it wasn't the money either, because Johnny always owed him. He had liked having Johnny around because he gave class to the place. It was something all right to see that slender young fellow standing debonairly at the bar among the truck drivers and ditch diggers. Sure, admitted McGarity, Johnny Nolan drank more than was good for him. But if he didn't get it here, he would have got it somewhere else. But he wasn't a rummy. He never got to cursing or brawling after he had a few drinks. Yes, decided McGarity, Johnny had been all right. The thing that McGarity missed was Johnny talking. How that fellow could talk, he thought. Why, he'd tell me about those cotton fields down south, or about the shores of Araby or sunny France, just like he'd been there instead of getting the information out of those songs he knew. I sure like to hear him talk about those far-off places, he mused. But best of all, I like to hear him talk about his family. McGarity used to have a dream about a family. This dream family lived far away from the saloon, so far that he had to hop a trolley to get home in the early morning after he locked up the saloon. The gentle wife of his dreams waited up for him and had hot coffee and something nice to eat ready. After eating, they'd talk about other things than the saloon. He had dream children, clean, pretty, smart children who were growing up sort of ashamed that their father ran a saloon. He was proud of their shame because it meant that he had the ability of begetting refined children. Well, that had been his dream of marriage. Then he had married May. She had been a curvy, sensuous girl with dark red hair and a wide mouth. But after a while of marriage, she turned into a stout, blousy woman known in Brooklyn as, quote, the saloon type. Married life had been fine for a year or two. Then McGarity woke up one morning and found that it was no good. May wouldn't change into his dream wife. She liked the saloon. She insisted that they rent rooms above it. She didn't want a house in Flushing. She didn't want to do housework. She liked to sit in the saloon's back room day and night and laugh and drink with the customers. And the children that May gave him ran the streets like hoodlums and bragged about their father owning a saloon. To his grievous disappointment, they were proud of it. He knew that May was unfaithful to him. He didn't care so long as it didn't get around to the extent that men laughed at him behind his back. Jealousy had left him years ago, when physical desire for May left him. He gradually grew indifferent about sleeping with her or with any other woman. Somehow, good talking had gotten tied up with good sex in his mind. He wanted a woman to talk to, one to whom he could tell all his thoughts, and he wanted her to talk to him, warmly, wisely, and intimately. If he could find such a woman, he thought, his manhood would come back to him. In his dumb, fumbling way, he wanted union of mind and soul along with union of body. As the years passed, the need of talking intimately with a woman who was close to him became an obsession. In his business, he observed human nature and came to certain conclusions about it. The conclusions lacked wisdom and originality. In fact, they were tiresome. But they were important to McGarity because he had figured them out for himself. In the few years of their marriage, he had tried to tell May about these conclusions, but all she said was, "I can imagine." Sometimes she varied by saying, "I can just imagine." Gradually then, because he could not share his inner self with her, he lost the power of being a husband to her, and she was unfaithful to him. McGarity was a man with a great sin on his soul. He hated his children. His daughter, Irene, was Francie's age. Irene was a pink-eyed girl, and her hair was of such a pale red that it too could be called pink. She was mean and stupid. She had been left back so many times that at 14 she was still in the 6th grade. His son Jim, 10 years old, had no outstanding characteristic excepting that his buttocks were always too fat for his britches. McGarity had another dream. It was that May would come to him and confess that the children were not his. That dream made him happy. He felt that he could love those children if he knew they were another man's. Then he could see their meanness and their stupidity objectively. Then he could pity them and help them. As long as he knew they were his, he hated them because he saw all of his own and May's worst traits in them. In the 8 years that Johnny had been patronizing McGarrity's saloon, he had spoken daily to McGarrity in praise of Katie and the children. McGarrity played a secret game during those 8 years. He pretended that he was Johnny, and that he, McGarrity, was talking so about May and his children. "Want to show you something," Johnny said once proudly as he pulled a paper. Oh my God, this is my dad, okay, you guys? Oh, I'm going to check your chats. I'll probably be more lurky than usual. I just haven't been feeling very well. Oh, Cyril, I'm sorry. But I'll be listening to the story, very relaxing. Oh, good. Well, you relax. I went ahead and gave Texas mod privileges, too, just in case anything happens. And I forgot, that they're familiar with how to do that, so... He was remarkable aside from being thick. Yeah, sounds like it. Okay, but this is classic my dad. "Want to show you something," he said proudly. "My boy Neely made these in school." Oh, wait. I skipped ahead. "Want to show you something," Johnny said once proudly as he pulled a paper from his pocket. "My little girl wrote this composition in school and got A on it, and she's only 10 years old. Listen, I'll read it to you." As Johnny read, McGarrity pretended that it was his little girl who had written the story. Another day, Johnny brought in a pair of crudely made wooden bookends and placed them on the bar with a flourish. "Want to show you something," he said proudly. "My boy Neely made these in school." "My boy Jimmy made these in school," said McGarrity proudly to himself as he examined the bookends. Another time, to start him talking, McGarrity had asked, "Think we'll get in the war, Johnny?" "Funny thing," Johnny had answered. "Katie and I sat up till morning talking about that very thing. I convinced her finally that Wilson will keep us out of it." How would it be, McGarrity thought, if he and May sat up all night to talk about that, and how would it be if she said, "You're right, Jim"? But he didn't know how it would be because he knew that could never happen. So when Johnny died, McGarrity lost his dreams. He tried to play the game by himself, but it didn't work out. He needed someone like Johnny to start him off. About the time that the three sisters sat in Katie's kitchen talking, McGarrity got an idea. He had more money than he knew how to spend, and nothing else. Maybe through Johnny's children, he could buy the way of dreaming again. He suspected that Katie was hard up. Maybe he could scare up a little easy work for Johnny's kids to do after school. He'd be helping them out. God knows he could afford it, and maybe he'd get something in return. Maybe they would talk to him the way they must have talked to their father. He told May he was going up to see Katie about some work for the children. May told him cheerfully enough that he'd be thrown out on his ear. McGarrity didn't think he'd be thrown out on his ear. As he shaved for the visit, he recalled the day that Katie had come in to thank him for the wreath. After Johnny's funeral, Katie went around thanking each person who had sent flowers. She had walked straight through McGarrity's front door, disdaining the deviousness of the side door marked Ladies' Entrance. Ignoring the staring men hanging on the bar, she had come straight to where McGarrity was. Seeing her, he had tucked up one bottom end of his apron into the belt, signifying that he was off duty for the moment and had come from behind the bar to meet her. Oh, you guys, I'm reading your chats. "I came to thank you for the wreath," she said. "Oh, that," he said, relieved. He thought she had come to bawl him out. "It was thoughtful of you." "I liked Johnny." "I know." She put her hand out. He looked at it dumbly for a moment before he got the idea that she wanted to shake him by the hand. As he wrung her hand, he asked, "No hard feelings?" "Why?" she answered. Johnny was free, white, and 21. She had turned then and walked out of the saloon. No, decided McGarrity, such a woman wouldn't throw him out on his ear if he came with well-meant intentions. He sat ill at ease on one of those kitchen chairs talking to Katie. The children were supposed to be doing their homework, but Francie, head bent deceptively over her book, was listening to Mr. McGarrity. "I talked it over with my missus," dreamed McGarrity, "and she agreed with me that we could use your girl. No hard work, you understand, just making the beds and washing a few dishes. I could use the boy downstairs, peeling eggs, and cutting cheese into hunks, for the free lunch at night. He wouldn't be anywhere near the bar. He'd work in the back kitchen. It would be for an hour or so after school and half a day on Saturday. I'd pay each $2 a week. Katie's heart jumped. $4 a week, she figured to herself, and the $1.50 from the paper route. Both of them could stay in school. There'd be enough to eat. It would get us through. What do you say, Mrs. Nolan? He asked. It's up to the children, she answered. Well, he threw his voice in their direction. What do you say? Francie pretended to tear herself away from her book. What did you say? Would you like to help Mrs. McGarity around the house? Yes, sir, said Francie. And you? He looked at Neely. Yes, sir, echoed the boy. That's settled, he turned to Katie. Of course, it's only temporary until we can get a regular woman to take over the house and kitchen work. I'd rather it was temporary anyhow, said Katie. You might be a little short, he worked his hand down into his pocket, so I'll pay the first week's salary in advance. No, Mr. McGarity, if they earn the money, they'll have the privilege of collecting it and bringing it home themselves at the end of the week. All right, but instead of taking his hand from his pocket, he closed it over the thick roll of bills. He thought, I've got so much money that buys me nothing, and they haven't got anything. He had an idea. Mrs. Nolan, you know how Johnny and I done business. I gave him credit, and he turned his tips over to me. Well, when he died, he was a little ahead. He took out the thick roll of bills. Francie's eyes popped when she saw that money. McGarity's idea was to say that Johnny was $12 ahead and to give Katie that sum. He looked at Katie as he took the rubber band off the money. Her eyes narrowed, and he changed his mind about the $12. He knew she'd never believe it. Of course, it isn't much, he said casually, just $2, but I figure it belongs to you. He detached 2 bills and held them out to her. Katie shook his head. I know there is no money owing us. If you told the truth, you'd say that Johnny owed you. Ashamed at being caught, McGarity put the thick roll back in his pocket where it felt uncomfortable against his thigh. But Mr. McGarity, I do thank you for your kind intentions, Katie said. Her last few words released McGarity's tongue. He started to talk. He spoke of his boyhood in Ireland, of his mother and father and the many brothers and sisters. He spoke of his dream marriage. He told her everything that had been in his thoughts for years. He didn't run down his wife and children. He left them out of the story entirely. He told about Johnny, how Johnny had spoken daily of his wife and children. Take those curtains, McGarity said, waving a thick hand at the half curtains made of yellow calico with a red rose design. Johnny told me how you ripped up an old dress of yours and made kitchen curtains out of it. He said it made the kitchen look fine, like the inside of a gypsy wagon. Francie, who had abandoned the pretense of study, picked up McGarity's last 2 words. Gypsy wagon, she thought, looking at the curtains with new eyes. So Papa had said that. I didn't think he noticed the new curtains at the time. At least he didn't say anything. But he had noticed. He had said that nice thing about them to this man. Hearing Johnny spoken of so made Francie almost believe that he wasn't dead. So Papa had said things like that to this man. She stared at McGarity with new interest. He was a short, stocky man with thick hands, a short red neck, and thinning hair. Who'd ever guess, thought Francie, looking at the outside of him, that he was so different inside? McGarity talked for 2 hours without stopping. Katie listened intently. She was not listening to McGarity talking. She was listening to McGarity talking about Johnny. When he stopped for a second, she gave him little transitional replies such as, yes, or then what, or and then. When he fumbled for a word, she offered him one which he accepted gratefully. And as he talked, a remarkable thing happened. He felt his lost... Oh, okay, gross. He felt his lost manhood stirring within him. It wasn't the physical fact of Katie in the room with him. Her body was swollen and distorted, and he couldn't look at her without wincing inwardly. It wasn't the woman, it was the talking to her that was doing it. It grew dark in the room. McGarity stopped talking. He was hoarse and tired, but it was a new peaceful kind of tiredness. He thought reluctantly that he had to get back. The saloon would be filling up with men on their way home from work, stopping in for a pre-supper drink. He didn't like May behind the bar when a crowd of men were there. He got to his feet slowly. Mrs. Nolan, he said, fumbling with his brown derby. Could I come up here once in a while to talk? She shook her head slowly. Just to talk? He repeated pleadingly. No, Mr. McGarity, she said as gently as she could. He sighed and went away. I guess she figured it out too, huh? I'm just going to see where the chapter ends. I think I need a snack break right in here somewhere. Yeah, there's still quite a bit of this chapter left. But that's a good little breaking point. Yeah, I was like, ew. But, you know, it did kind of remind me of how important it is to be able to talk to your partner, right? All right, my tea is cold. We'll have a little bit more, but I will make some more hot right now. I think I want hot tea with the cheese. It always helps me digest things like fats. You know, having the hotness, hot liquid with it. Okay, so this is after the first real infusion, not the rinse, and those leaves have really opened up quite a bit. You wondered if he would have a little bit of thing for her from last week's chapters. Actually, that's Officer McShane. I think you were, I think you might not have been here yet when she was sitting around the table talking to her sisters about what was she going to do for the next 2 months. And they were talking about having, the kids start working, and she didn't want to pull them out of school. And then one of her sisters said, "Don't you have any man friends? You're such a pretty woman." And she was like, she thought briefly of Officer McShane and then said, no, she didn't. And so, yeah, if she was a little nicer to Mr. McGarity, she probably could have a lot of money, more than he knew what to do with. Gonna sip this off. Anyway, I'm sorry you're not feeling well, Cereal. I don't know, did you have a lot of strange food? As in, not normal, out of the ordinary. Probably the holidays are like that. I'm actually doing okay. I'm having trouble at night. And the reason, well, I never know what the reason is when it comes to my gut, but I did change something I was doing. I went on a new protocol from the same company. I just think I told you, I'm just going to go on to the next step. The step that I was at, the motility step, was supposed to just be like a month or two. And after being on it for 8 months, and I was like, well, it's working, but I can't move forward. Like, I can't stop taking it, I talked to the customer service there, and they were like, you're welcome to try the next step, see how it goes. And so I did. And I didn't want to start taking it until I had this time off. And so I started taking the next step on Christmas Day because I had 5 days off in a row. And I thought, if it's really not working, or if I have terrible, reaction to it, I will know over that period of time, and I won't have to be at the office or anything. So this color is still really light. Probably could have steeped it longer, but that's okay. I don't mind drinking nice light infusion. What was I gonna say? And I'm also like, I'm a natural food, natural supplement person from way, way back. But even I had my questions about how I would react to taking the silver. I'm taking I forget what it's called. It's a nano silver liquid. Apparently it doesn't linger in your system for more than 24 hours, though, so I won't be turning purple anytime soon. Yeah, these are the baby, yeah, you know what it is. The baby bell cheese, yeah. It's been sitting on the table for a while now, so it's softer than I expected. Yeah, do you ever see people who've taken too much silver? They kind of turn blue. Anyway, that won't be happening, and it's very small. It's like 1 teaspoon a day. It's different from colloidal silver, Texas, but basically that's the idea. But it's made in a different way. It's nano. Oh, well, I don't have it in front of me, but the idea is that it's going to, kill the bad stuff, which I am fully convinced that my gut is full of. I actually did a test where I sent in a sample. This was like a year or so ago. And they sent me back a full list of what all was living in there, good and bad. And there were definitely some things that do not belong in my biome. And the problem is, I have taken these like really powerful antibiotics for this condition, but of course they wipe out everything. And the other thing I've discovered is they only work while I'm taking them, or maybe for another week after that. And so I've spent like $200 out of pocket for 2 weeks relief, or 3 weeks max. So I told the practitioner, I think it was a nurse practitioner I talked to, because you can't even get to talk to a real GI, doctor around here. I was like, I'm just not interested in doing that again. So the silver will kill, and I'm not quite sure, but hopefully it's only going to kill the bad stuff. The potential side effect is that then you have a lot of like dead organisms, and it can make you feel sick. You can get headache, you can get, all kinds of symptoms. And then I'm taking a cleanse product, which is basically immunoglobulin, and that is supposed to bind with the dead pieces parts and flush them out. And so like it's a two-parter, This is just nice and soothing. Oh, I forgot to show you the cup cereal, but you can kind of see it through the tea. Yeah, it's like a cake batter. This is called a cake batter glaze. And you've seen this. This is the cup that looks like a little bit like a bundt cake on the bottom. Let's see. You only got a couple hours of sleep and think it kind of messed with my stomach a bit. It doesn't feel serious. Just blah. Oh, okay, good. So yeah, there's a war going on in my tummy, but it's not as bad as expected. But I have had trouble getting to sleep each night. Maybe I should just stop eating dinner. I'm not sure, but it kind of feels like it builds up. I take the silver in the morning before eating anything. And I have a feeling that it kind of like happens throughout the day. And then by evening, like it's really, full on like war is happening or whatever. It's kind of what it feels like. And then, so I have a little trouble sleeping, getting to sleep. Yeah. A lot of gas is produced and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not as bad as I thought it might be. Not at all. I will definitely keep doing it. I do feel like it's doing something, and that's good, right? Wow, this cheese is so much softer when it's not like cold. I usually eat it like straight out of the fridge. Oh, and I was talking about these crackers, but I didn't have any yet. These are called I think they're called Garden Crisp. And it's a vegetable cracker, like it's mostly spinach. But you can kind of see there's also, I think there's peppers, carrot. Oh, the back really shows kind of a little bit more. And they're gluten-free. They're held together with some kind of, I think it's tapioca flour and a couple of other things. So they are, they're very cardboardy, but that doesn't bother me at all. Yeah, I love them. They do taste like vegetables when you eat them. It doesn't just taste like, wheat. I'm gonna keep nibbling this cheese here. And then this is the card we drew, which is kind of ominous, but we did draw it upside down, so at least it's kind of like, well, maybe you've had some grief or upheaval, but you're figuring out how to move past it. Okay, one more sip of tea and we can keep going. Oh, there's nothing like the tea when it's just fresh and hot. Okay, here we go. So they got jobs at the saloon, at the house. I think it's at his house, not at the saloon itself. Oh, I'm just checking to see if my honey roasted peanuts got sticky at all, and it doesn't seem like they have. So that's nice, because it was certainly raining earlier today, and thought it could really be getting humid. It feels humid. Okay. This is another great slice of life here. Is like what did people have to clean? About what was the work that they did? Okay. Francie was glad to be so busy. It kept her from missing Papa too much. She and Neely got up at 6 a.m. and helped Mama with the cleaning for 2 hours before they got ready for school. Mama couldn't work hard now. Francie polished the brass bell plates in the 3 vestibules and cleaned each banister spoke with an oiled cloth. Neely swept out the cellars and swept down the carpeted stairs. Both of them got the filled ash cans up on the curb each day. It had been a problem because the 2 of them together couldn't so much as budge the heavy cans. Francie got the idea of tipping over the cans, dumping the ashes on the cellar floor, carrying the empty cans up the curb, and then refilling them with coal buckets. It worked fine, even if it meant a lot of trips up and down the cellar. That left only the linoleum-laid halls for Mama to scrub. 3 of the tenants offered to scrub their own hallways until after Katie had had her baby, and that helped a whole lot. After school, the children had to go to church for, quote, instruction, since both were being confirmed that spring. After instruction, they worked for McGarity. As he had promised, the work was easy. Francie made up 4 tumbled beds and washed a few breakfast dishes and swept the rooms. It took less than an hour. Neely had the same schedule as Francie, except that his paper route was added on. Sometimes he didn't get home for supper until 8 o'clock. He worked in the kitchen back of McGarity's saloon. His job was to take the shells off 4 dozen hard-boiled eggs, cut hard cheese into inch cubes and stick a toothpick in each cube, and slice big pickles lengthwise. McGarity waited a few days until the children got used to working for him. Then he decided it was time to have them talk to him the way Johnny had. He went into the kitchen, sat down, and watched Neely working. He's the spitting image of his father, thought McGarity. He waited a long time, letting the boy get used to him there. Then he cleared his throat. Make any wooden bookends lately? He asked. No, sir, stammered Neely, startled at the odd question. McGarity waited. Why didn't the boy start talking? Neely shelled eggs faster. McGarity tried again. Think Wilson will keep us out of the war? I don't know, said Neely. McGarity waited a long time. Neely thought he was checking up on the way he worked. Anxious to please, the boy worked so fast that he was finished ahead of time. He placed the last shelled egg into the glass bowl and looked up. Ah, now he's going to talk to me, thought McGarity. Is that all you want done? Asked Neely. That's all. Still McGarity waited. I guess I'll go then, ventured Neely. All right, son, sighed McGarity. He watched the boy walk out of the back door. If only he'd turn around and say something. Something. Personal, thought McGarity. But Neely didn't turn around. McGarity tried Francie the next day. He came upstairs to the flat, sat down, and said nothing. Francie got a little frightened and started sweeping towards the door. If he comes at me, she thought, I can run out. McGarity sat quiet for a long time, thinking he was getting her used to him. He didn't know he was frightening her. Written any grade A number 1 compositions lately, he asked. No, sir. He waited a while. Do you think we'll get into this war? I don't know. She edged closer to the door. He thought, I'm scaring her. She thinks I'm like that fellow in the hallway. Remember that incident? Aloud, he said, Don't be afraid. I'm going. You can lock the door after me if you want. Yes, sir, she said. After he had gone, Francie thought, I guess he only wanted to talk, but I have nothing to say to him. May McGarity came up once. Francie was on her knees trying to poke out some dirt from behind the water pipes under the sink. May told her to get up and forget it. Lord love you, child, she said. Don't be killing yourself working. This flat will be standing here long after you and I are dead and gone. She took a mound of rosy jello out of the icebox, cut it in half, and slid a portion on another plate. She garnished it liberally with whipped cream, plunked 2 spoons on the table, sat down and indicated that Francie do the same. I'm not hungry, lied Francie. Eat anyhow to be sociable, May said. It was the first time Francie had ever eaten jello and whipped cream. It was so good she had to remember her manners and not gobble it down. As she ate, she thought, why, Mrs. McGarity's all right. Mr. McGarity's all right too, only I guess they aren't all right to each other. Excuse me. May and Jim McGarity sat alone at a little round table in back of the saloon, eating their usual hurried and silent supper. Unexpectedly, she placed her hand on his arm. He trembled at the unexpected touch. His small, light eyes looked into her large, mahogany-colored ones and saw pity in them. It won't work out, Jim, she said gently. Excitement churned up in him. She knows, he thought. Why, she understands. There's an old saying, May continued, money won't buy everything. I know, he said. I'll let them go then. Wait until a couple of weeks after her kid is born. Give them a show. She got up and walked out to the bar. McGarity sat there, torn apart by his feelings. We held a conversation, he thought in wonder. No names were mentioned and nothing was said exactly in the words, but she knew what I was thinking and I knew what she was thinking. He hurried after his wife. He wanted to hold on to that understanding. He saw May standing at the end of the bar. A husky teamster had his arm around her waist and was whispering something in her ear. She had her hand over her mouth to hold back her laughter. As McGarity came in, the teamster removed his arm sheepishly and moved down to stand with a group of men. As McGarity went behind the bar, he looked into his wife's eyes. They were blank and had no understanding in them. McGarity's face fell back into the old lines of grievous disappointment as he started his evening's work. One moment. Okay, quick break. Okay, let's pour just a little bit more tea here. Just had to kind of clear my throat a little bit. I think I had a cookie crumb in there or something. Okay, Mary Romilly was getting old. She was no longer able to go about Brooklyn alone. She had a longing to see Katie before her confinement, so she gave the insurance collector a message. When a woman gives birth, she told him, death holds her hand for a little while. Sometimes he doesn't let go. Tell my youngest daughter that I would see her once more before her time comes. The collector gave the message. The following Sunday, Katie went over to see her mother, taking Francie with her. Neely begged off, saying he had promised to pitch for the 10 Ikes who were trying to get up a ball game in the lots. Sissy's kitchen was big and warm and sunny and spotlessly clean. Grandma Mary Romilly was sitting by the stove in a low rocker. It was the only piece of furniture she had brought from Austria, and it had stood by the hearth in her family's hut for more than 100 years. Sissy's husband sat by the window, holding the baby while he gave it its bottle. After Mary and Sissy had been greeted, Francie and Katie greeted him. Hello, John, said Katie. Hello, Katie, he answered. Hello, Uncle John. Hello, Francie. He never said another word during the entire visit. Francie stared at him, wondering about him. The family regarded him as temporary, as they had regarded Sissy's other husbands and lovers. Francie wondered whether he himself felt temporary. His real name was Steve, but Sissy always referred to him as my John. And when the family spoke of him, they called him the John or Sissy's John. Francie wondered whether the men in the publishing house where he worked called him John too. Did he ever protest? Did he ever say, look here, Sissy, my name is Steve and not John, and tell your sisters to call me Steve too? "Sissy, you're getting stouter," Mama was saying. "It's natural for a woman to put on a little weight after she's had a baby," said Sissy with a straight face. She smiled at Francie. "Would you like to hold the baby, Francie?" "Oh, yes." Without a word, Sissy's tall husband got up, gave over the baby and its bottle to Francie, and still without a word, walked out of the room. No one commented on his going. Francie sat in his vacated chair. She had never held a baby in her arms before. She touched the baby's soft round cheek with her fingers as she had seen Joanna do. A thrill started at her fingertips, went up her arm, and throughout her entire body. When I get big, she decided, I'll always have a new baby in the house. Okay. While she held the baby, she listened to Mama and Grandma talking and watched Sissy making up a month's supply of noodles. Sissy took a ball of stiff yellow dough, rolled it flat with the rolling pin, then rolled the flat dough up like a jelly roll. With a sharp knife, she cut the roll into paper-thin strips, unwound the strips, and hung them on a rack made of slender dowel sticks, which stood before the kitchen stove. This was to dry out the noodles. Francie felt that there was something different about Sissy. She wasn't the old Aunt Sissy. It wasn't that she was a bit less slender than usual. The being different was something that did not have to do with the way she looked. Francie puzzled over it. Mary Romley wanted to hear every word of news, and Francie told her everything, starting from the end and working back. First, she told of the children working for McGarrity's and how the money they brought in was keeping them. Then she went back to the day McGarrity had sat in her kitchen and talked about Johnny. She ended up with saying, "I tell you, Mother, if McGarrity hadn't come along when he did, I don't know what would have happened. I was so low that just a few nights before that I had prayed to Johnny to help me. That was foolish, I know." "Not foolish," said Mary. "He heard you and he helped you." "A ghost can't help anyone, Mother," said Sissy. "Ghosts are not always those who pass through closed doors," said Mary Romilly. "Katie has told how her husband used to talk to this saloon man. In all those years of the talking, Yanni gave away pieces of himself to this man. When Katie called on her man for help, the pieces of him came together in this man, and it was Yanni within the saloon man's soul that heard and came to her help." Francie turned it over in her mind. If that is so, she thought, then Mr. McGarrity gave us back all those pieces of Papa when he talked so long about him. There is nothing of Papa in him now. Maybe that's why we can't talk to him the way he wants us to. That was some wisdom right there. When it was time to leave, Sissy gave Katie a shoebox full of noodles to take home. As Francie kissed her grandmother in goodbye, Mary Romilly held her close and whispered in her own language, "In the month to come, give unto thy mother more than obedience and respect. She will have great need of love and understanding." Francie didn't understand a word of what her grandmother had said, but she answered, "Yes, Grandma." Oh, she said it in German. Oh, got it. Okay. Going home in the trolley, Francie held the shoebox in her lap because Mama had no lap now. Francie thought deep thoughts during the ride. If what Grandma Mary Romilly said is true, then it must be that no one ever dies, really. Papa is gone, but he's still here in many ways. He's here in Neely, who looks just like him, and in Mama, who knew him so long. He's here in his mother, who began him and who is still living. Maybe I will have a boy someday who looks like Papa and has all of Papa's good without the drinking. And that boy will have a boy, and that boy will have a boy. It might be there is no real death. Her thoughts went to McGarrity. No one would ever believe there was any part of Papa in him. She thought of Mrs. McGarrity and how she had made it easy for her to sit down and eat that Jell-O. Something clicked in Francie's mind. She knew all of a sudden what was different about Sissy. She spoke to her mother. "Aunt Sissy doesn't use that strong, sweet perfume anymore, does she, Mama?" "No, she doesn't have to anymore." "Why?" "She's got her baby now and a man to look after her and the baby." Francie wanted to ask more questions, but Mama had her eyes closed and was leaning her head back against the seat. She looked white and tired, and Francie decided not to bother her anymore. She'd have to figure it out for herself. It must be, she thought, that this using strong perfume is tied up somehow with a woman wanting a baby and wanting to find a man who can give her a baby and look after it and her too. She put that nugget of knowledge away with all the others that she was continually collecting. Francie was beginning to get a headache. She didn't know whether it was caused by the excitement of holding the baby, the bouncing trolley car, the idea of Papa, or the discovery about Sissy's perfume. Maybe it was because she was getting up so early in the morning now, and being so busy all day. Maybe it was because it was the time in the month when she could look for a headache anyhow. Well, Francie decided, I guess the thing that is giving me this headache is life, and nothing else but. Don't be silly, said Mama quietly, still leaning back with her eyes closed. Aunt Sissy's kitchen was too hot. I have a headache myself. Francie jumped. Was it getting so that Mama could look right into her mind even with her eyes closed? Then she remembered that she had forgotten she was thinking and had said that lost thought about life out loud. She laughed for the first time since Papa had died, and Mama opened her eyes and smiled. Oh, what an awesome story, huh? All right, let's take a quick break because that's the end of chapter 38. We'll have a little bit more snacking. I'm wondering how long chapter 39 is not very long, so we can absolutely nail it right after this. Oh no, yeah, about having a baby in the house at all times. Oh, hell no. I think she wasn't thinking about that realistically. She's still 14, I believe. So, you gotta make some allowances. All right, gonna have this cheese before it gets too much softer. With the crunchy crackers and with the grapes. I love kids, but that is an awful ideal. You would never sleep again. I know, right? She clearly wasn't thinking from a practical. When her mom has the baby, I would think she'll be remembering what that really means. And that actually reminds me of this is me sneaking grapes out of the bottom of this bowl so that I have these grapes. I have some single grapes in the bottom of the bowl so that like the nice little bunch of grapes, I'm not plucking grapes off of that. It's all about the optics. So yeah, I haven't slept great the last 2 nights. I feel fine today, but the first night it was the stomach thing. Like I woke up, when it gets like that, it wakes me up. It's almost like it's just like a standard. It's inevitable. Like you can almost set your clock by it. I wake up at 2 something. In this case, I think it was 2:30, but it can be as early as 1:30 or 2 with a nightmare. So, and they're sort of like typical nightmares. Like, I mean, again, they also like follow a pattern. I guess characteristic is the word I'm looking for. And then it takes me a while to get back to sleep because I have to, get my stomach all right again. So that happened 2 nights ago, but additionally, something that's been happening, separately from that is that the people in the apartment downstairs from us have a baby. So speaking of not sleeping, that's what reminded me. And the baby's been fussy lately, and their apartment is directly below my bedroom. And I have actually had to complain in the past about some people that were some previous tenants in that room that were like really noisy adults, at 2 or 3 in the morning. And that, I don't like to complain to the management about stuff like that, but it went on for like several days in a row or like a week straight. And I finally said something. I was like absolutely desperate. They would start, I think it was after the bar would close. I mean, frankly, it was like right about that time, and it had that sort of tenor to it. Like, super loud talking, laughing, and, sort of drunkenly sounding. But those people aren't here anymore. So it's like a younger couple, and they have what sounds like a new baby. And so the baby's been crying, at night. And last night it woke me up 3 times. But, again, it's not like I'm going to get annoyed about it. I'm sure, it's really waking them up, right? I'm sure they're doing the best they can to take care of it and, feed it or whatever it is that they need to do. And it's probably horrible for them. So I'm certainly not going to say anything, and I'm just terrible at wearing earplugs. I do put on like sleep sounds, mostly rain sounds, but like the feeling of earplugs in my ears bothers me more than noise. So I'm kind of over a barrel with that. Like I need to figure it out. But anyway, it's not a problem because when it's just the baby, I can get back to sleep quite quickly. At least that's kind of been my experience in these last few days. So it just reminded me because your comment about not sleeping anymore. I was like, what would you be thinking? Yeah, when it's a baby, there's only so much you can do. I'm sure they're doing it, I'm sure they're doing the best they can. I'm sure it's like absolutely no fun for them either. That's a studio apartment below us. So, can you imagine just, like you're in the same room with the baby? I mean, in some ways that's good, right? But for the noise, like you would hear every peep of everything. Okay, so we're using this pot today because we have a Wu Yi Hong Shui oolong today, which works really well with this pot, or at least that's what I've been making in it. So I'm going to wait a little while and get a really good, maybe a darker colored, more flavorful infusion of this, and then we can continue. Yeah, I hope everyone's doing okay, relaxing. We're in that, mid-holiday season right now, Christmas, and, well, I guess Hanukkah is ongoing, and then New Year's is coming up in just a few days, so I'm going to have one of these tea cookies, which is a blueberry tea cookie. It does seem to have, like, little blueberry bits in it. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's like little dried bits of blueberry. Not that many, but surprisingly, the flavor is there. Show you a little closer. So you can see one there. Just little bits. But luckily, I'm actually surprised that I'm even waking up from the, baby, because it's not very loud up here. But last night I woke up 3 times, and every time I heard the baby, and I'm like, it's gotta be that. There's nothing else going on. My stomach was okay, which is a plus. Oh, that cookie's pretty sweet. Ooh. Pretty darn sweet. And I was able to get right back to sleep because it really isn't that loud. So I don't know why it's waking me up. And I'm not having like nightmares or anything. I'm just waking up. It's like it's gently waking me up somehow. Kind of strange. So this is not, quote unquote, enough leaves for this pot. So I'm waiting extra long, to actually get some little bit of intensity out of this. A baby waking you up is better than a nightmare. Oh, it's a lot better. That's what I was saying. Like, it's not really bothering me. Like, I'm waking up and I'm getting right back to sleep. I don't have to, like, get up and go, frankly, take a medicine or do something, to make my stomach feel better. Like, it's not about that, because that can take up to an hour or even 2 hours to, like, get right again. Get comfortable and be able to go back to sleep. So, yeah, I'm just sort of turning over whatever and going back to sleep. But I've just been noticing, I'm like, it's the baby again. Interesting. Okay. Haha. So I just kind of took another glance at this. So this is a profile of the author of this, and it starts out, when Betty Weiner was 8 years old, she received an A for a grade school composition. I knew then, she later recalled, that I would write a book someday. 40 years later, Betty Smith fulfilled her prophecy. So it is kind of it has been said that it is her story. All right, let's go with chapter 39. I'm not even sure who these people are, so this is cool. We'll see who this is. Is this Francie and Neely? Is it Katie and Neely? It must be Francie. Anyway, we'll find out. I love the streetcar in the background there. Yeah, it must be Francie and Neely because this is about their confirmation. Oh, let me show you this back of this cup if you haven't seen it. This is the bottom of the teacup. I know some of you have seen this before. It's like a weird bundt cake shape. As she gets tea on the book. Okay. Should have covered it up. Silly me. But yeah, it's let me wipe it out. Tea towels are here for a reason, and this is the reason, to dry things. So yeah, it's super heavy, which kind of keeps the tea hot, which is nice. But it is a little hard to drink out of because, like, look how thick that edge is. So you try to, and it's lumpy. So you put your mouth on there and you're kind of like, how do I sip this? You know? But yeah, it's just a weird, irregular shape. I'm not sure what this shape is supposed to be, but to me it looks like a lumpy bundt cake. And then this is called a cake battered glaze. So it's kind of a chino glaze I had mentioned earlier. So yeah, that's what we're having today. Sorry, book. Okay. Here we go. Ooh, it's almost too hot to... So you can see the tea is still really light. So I just don't... I prefer to drink it at a lighter strength today anyways. And that's working out well. Actually, the first steeping was like the most powerful. Okay. Chapter 39. Francie and Neely were confirmed in May. Francie was almost 14 and a half years old, and Neely was just a year younger. Sissy, who was an expert seamstress, made Francie's simple white muslin dress. Katie managed to buy her white kid slippers and a pair of long white silk stockings. They were Francie's first silk stockings. Neely wore the black suit he got for his father's funeral. There was a legend in the neighborhood that any 3 wishes made on that day would come true. One had to be an impossible wish, another a wish that you could make come true yourself, and the third had to be a wish for when you grew up. Francie's impossible wish was that her straight brown hair change into golden curly hair like Neely's. Her second wish was that she'd have a nice speaking voice like Mama and Evie and Sissy. And her third wish for when she was grown up was that she'd travel all over the world. Neely wished, 1, that he'd become very wealthy. Okay, that was his impossible. 2, that he'd get better marks on his report card. And 3, that he wouldn't drink like Papa when he grew up. There was an iron-bound convention in Brooklyn that children must have their picture taken by a regular photographer when they were confirmed. Katie couldn't afford to have pictures made. She had to be content with letting Flossie Gaddis, who had a box camera, take a snapshot. Floss posed them on the edge of the sidewalk and snapped the picture, unaware that a trolley lumbered by the instant of exposure. She had the snapshot enlarged and framed and presented it to Francie as a confirmation day present. Sissy was there when the picture arrived. Katie held it, and they all examined it over her shoulder. Francie had never been photographed before. For the first time, she saw herself as others saw her. She was standing stiff and straight on the edge of the curb, her back to the gutter and her dress blowing sidewise in the wind. Neely stood close to her, was a head taller, and looked very wealthy and handsome in his freshly pressed black suit. The sun had slanted over the roofs in such a way that Neely was in the sun and his face was clear and bright, while Francie looked dark and angry in the shadow. Behind both, was the blurred trolley going by. Sissy said, "I bet that's the only confirmation picture in the world with a trolley car in it." "It's a good picture," said Katie. "They look more natural standing on the street than in front of the picture man's cardboard church window." She hung it up over the mantelpiece. "What name did you take, Neely?" Sissy asked. "Papa's. Now I'm Cornelius John Nolan." "That's a good name for a surgeon," commented Katie. "Mom." "I took Mama's name," said Francie importantly. "Now my full name is Mary Frances Catherine Nolan." Francie waited. Mama did not say that was a good name for a writer. "Katie, have you any pictures of Johnny?" Sissy asked. "No, just the one of both of us taken on our wedding day. Why?" "Nothing. Only time passes so, doesn't it?" "Yes," sighed Katie. "That's one of the few things we can be sure of." Confirmation was over, and Francie didn't have to go to instruction anymore. She had an extra hour daily which she was devoting to the novel she was writing to prove to Miss Gardner, the new English teacher, that she did know about beauty. Since her father's death, Francie had stopped writing about birds and trees and my impressions. Because she missed him so, she had taken to writing little stories about him. She tried to show that, in spite of his shortcomings, he had been a good father and a kindly man. She had written 3 such stories which were marked C instead of the usual A. The 4th came back with a line telling her to remain after school. All the children had gone home. Miss Gardner and Francie were alone in the room with a big dictionary in it. Francie's last 4 compositions lay on Miss Gardner's desk. "What's happened to your writing, Frances?" asked Miss Gardner. "I don't know. You were one of my best pupils. You wrote so prettily. I enjoyed your compositions. But these last ones," she flicked at them contemptuously. "I looked up the spelling and took pains with my penmanship and... I'm referring to your subject matter. You said we could choose our own subjects. But poverty, starvation, and drunkenness are ugly subjects to choose. We all admit these things exist, but one doesn't write about them." "What does one write about?" Unconsciously, Francie picked up the teacher's phraseology. "One delves into the imagination and finds beauty there. The writer, like the artist, must strive for beauty always." "What is beauty?" asked the child. "I can think of no better definition than Keats's. Beauty is truth, truth, beauty." Francie took her courage into her 2 hands and said, "Those stories are the truth." "Nonsense!" exploded Miss Gardner. Then, softening her tone, she continued, "By truth, we mean things like the stars always being there and the sun always rising, and the true nobility of man and mother love and love for one's country," she ended anticlimactically. "I see," said Francie. As Miss Gardner continued talking, Francie answered her bitterly in her mind. "Drunkenness is neither truth nor beauty. It's a vice. Drunkards belong in jail, not in stories. And poverty, there is no excuse for that. There's work enough for all who want it. People are poor because they're too lazy to work. There's nothing beautiful about laziness." Imagine Mama lazy. "Hunger is not beautiful. It is also unnecessary. We have well-organized charities. No one need go hungry." Francie ground her teeth. Her mother hated the word charity above any word in the language, and she had brought up her children to hate it too. "Now, I'm not a snob," stated Miss Gardner. "I do not come from a wealthy family. My father was a minister with a very small salary." "But it was a salary, Miss Gardner." "And the only help my mother had was a succession of untrained maids, mostly girls from the country." "I see. You were poor, Miss Gardner? Poor with a maid." "Many times we were without a maid, and my mother had to do all the housework herself." "And my mother, Miss Gardner, has to do all her own housework, and yes, 10 times more cleaning than that." "I wanted to go to the state university, but we couldn't afford it. My father had to send me to a small denominational college." but admit you had no trouble going to college. And believe me, you're poor when you go to such a college. I know what hunger is, too. Time and time again, my father's salary was held up and there was no money for food. Once we had to live on tea and toast for 3 days. So you know what it is to be hungry, too. But I'd be a dull person if I wrote about nothing but being poor and hungry, wouldn't I? Francie didn't answer. Wouldn't I? Repeated Miss Gardner emphatically. Yes, ma'am. Now, your play for graduation. She took a thin manuscript from her desk drawer. Some parts are very good indeed. Other parts you've gone off. For instance, she turned a page. Here fate says, "And youth, what is thy ambition?" And the boy answers, "I would be a healer. I would take the broken bodies of men and mend them." Now that's a beautiful idea, Francis, but you spoil it here. Fate, that's what thou wouldst be, but see, this is what thou shalt be. Light shines on an old man soldering bottom of ash can. Old man, once I thought to be a mender of men. Now I'm a mender of... Miss Gardner looked up suddenly. You didn't by any chance mean that to be funny, did you, Francis? Oh, no, ma'am. After our little talk, you can see why we can't use your play for graduation. I see. Francie's heart all but broke. Now, Beatrice Williams had a cute idea. A fairy waves a wand and girls and boys in costume come out, and there's one for each holiday in the year, and each one says a little poem about the holiday he represents. It's an excellent idea, but unfortunately Beatrice cannot make rhymes. Wouldn't you like to take that idea and write the verses? Beatrice wouldn't mind. We can put a note on the program that the idea comes from her. That's fair enough, isn't it? Yes, ma'am, but I don't want to use her ideas. I want to use my own. That's commendable, of course. Well, I won't insist. She stood up. I've taken all this time with you because I honestly believe that you have promise. Now that we've talked things out, I'm sure you'll stop writing those sordid little stories. Sordid. Francie turned the word over. It was not in her vocabulary. What does that mean, sordid? What did I tell you when you don't know a word? Sing-songed Miss Gardner drolly. Oh, I forgot. Francie went to the big dictionary and looked up the word. Sordid. Filthy. Filthy? She thought of her father wearing a fresh Dickian collar every day of his life and shining his worn shoes as often as twice a day. Dirty. Papa had his own mug at the barber shop. Base. Francie passed that up, not knowing exactly what it meant. Gross. Never. Papa was a dancer. He was slender and quick. His body wasn't gross. Also, mean and low. She remembered 101 little tendernesses and act of thoughtfulness on the part of her father. She remembered how everyone had loved him so. Her face got hot. She couldn't see the next words because the page turned red under her eyes. She turned on Miss Gardner, her face twisted with fury. Don't you ever dare use that word about us. Us? Asked Miss Gardner blankly. We were talking about your compositions. Why, Francis, her voice was shocked. I'm surprised, a well-behaved girl like you. What would your mother say if she knew you had been impertinent to your teacher? Francie was frightened. Impertinence to a teacher was almost a reformatory offense in Brooklyn. Please excuse me, she repeated abjectly. I didn't mean it. I understand, said Miss Gardner gently. She put her arm around Francie and led her to the door. Our little talk has made an impression on you, I see. Sordid is an ugly word, and I'm glad you resented my using it. It shows that you understand. Probably you don't like me anymore, but please believe that I spoke for your own good. Someday you'll remember what I said, and you'll thank me for it. Francie wished adults would stop telling her that. Already the load of thanks in the future was weighing her down. She figured she'd have to spend the best years of her womanhood hunting up people to tell them that they were right and to thank them. Miss Gardner handed her the sordid compositions and the play, saying, when you get home, burn these in the stove. Apply the match to them yourself. As the flames rise, keep saying, I am burning ugliness. I am burning ugliness. Walking home from school, Francie tried to figure the whole thing out. She knew Miss Gardner wasn't mean. She had spoken for Francie's good. Only it didn't seem good to Francie. She began to understand that her life might seem revolting to some educated people. She wondered, when she got educated, whether she'd be ashamed of her background. Would she be ashamed of her people? Ashamed of her handsome papa, who had been so light-hearted, kind, and understanding. Ashamed of brave and truthful Mama, who was so proud of her own daughter, even though Grandma couldn't read or write. Oh, her own mother, sorry, even though Grandma couldn't read or write. Ashamed of Neely, who was such a good, honest boy. No, if being educated would make her ashamed of what she was, then she wanted none of it. But I'll show that Miss Gardner, she vowed. I'll show her I've got an imagination. I certainly will show her. She started her novel that day. Its heroine was Sherry Nola, a girl conceived, born, and brought up in sweltering luxury. The story was called This Is I, and it was the untrue story of Francie's life. Okay, gonna take a quick break. So is my kettle. Gotta love when a teacher thinks they know the right way to make art. Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember what what I remember about this period. It was like late 1900s. Or maybe 1910s. And I'm remembering they had this movement. I'm trying to remember what it was called. But there were these, like, for example, women would dress in these like Greek toga type things and dance around in a circle. And there was this like big embrace of the classical, there was this sense of classical beauty about what was beautiful. And a lot of it was like Greek and Roman and, the classics. By the way, Serial, I don't think you were here. Look at this cute coaster that my coworker made for me. It's a tree slice. Love me a nice tree slice. And she also, I'm going to cover up her name here, but she signed it on the back. So cute. I'm just not using it for a teacup, although I'm sure I probably could, but I'm not sure how it would do with water. Not sure what kind of paint it is. It looks a little bit like oil paints, but I'm just not sure. Acrylic, maybe? One more grape. Let's read to the end of this chapter, and then I'll have to take a break and get some more hot water. My kettle just turned itself off, but that's fine for now. Oh, those grapes are so tasty. The package just said that they were a product of USA, but I don't know where. I guess California, probably, right? I just didn't expect them in this time of year. I still wishing I could move. That camera is as far over as it'll go to the right. I guess it's okay. We kind of got everything in the shot, right? Okay. So she's writing a novel. Francie had 20 pages written now. So far, it ran to minute descriptions of the lush furnishings of Sherry's house, rhapsodies over Sherry's exquisite clothes, and course-by-course accounts of fabulous meals consumed by the heroine. Okay, keep in mind Francie's just like 14 years old, right? So she's not super mature. When it was finished, Francie planned to ask Sissy's John to take it over to his shop and get it published for her. Francie had a fine dream about how it would be when she presented her book to Miss Gardner. The scene was all worked out in her mind. She went over the dialogue. Francie, as she gives the book to Miss Gardner, I believe you'll find nothing sordid in this. Please consider it as my term's work. I hope you won't mind its being published. Miss Gardner's jaw drops open. Francie takes no notice. It's a bit easier to read print, don't you think? As Miss Gardner reads, Francie stares out the window unconcernedly. Miss Gardner, after reading, Why, Frances, this is wonderful. Francie, what? With a start of remembrance. Oh, the novel. I dashed it off at odd moments. It doesn't take long to write things of which you know nothing. When you write of actual things, it takes longer because you have to live them first. Francie crossed that out. She wouldn't want Miss Gardner to suspect her feelings had been hurt. She rewrote it. Francie, what? Recalling. Oh, the novel. I'm glad you like it. Miss Gardner, timidly. Francis, could I ask you to autograph it for me? Francie, but of course. Miss Gardner uncaps her fountain pen and presents it pen point end toward herself to Francie. Francie writes, compliments of M. Francis K. Nolan. Miss Gardner, examining autograph. What a distinctive signature. Francie, it's merely my legal name. Miss Gardner, timidly. Francis? Francie, please feel free. Please feel as free to speak to me as in the old days. Miss Gardner, could I ask you to write to my friend Muriel Gardner above your signature? Francie, after a barely perceptible pause. And why not? With a twisted smile. I've always written what you asked me to write. Writes inscription. Miss Gardner, low whisper. Thank you. Francie, Miss Gardner, not that it matters now, but would you grade this work? Just for old time's sake. Miss Gardner takes red pencil, writes large A+ on book. It was such a rosy dream that Francie started the next chapter in a fever of excitement. She'd write and get it done quickly so the dream could come true. She wrote, Parker, Sherry Nola asked her personal maid, what's cook giving us for dinner tonight? Breast of pheasant under glass, I believe, with hothouse asparagus and imported mushrooms and pineapple mousse, Miss Sherry. It sounds horribly dull, observed Sherry. Yes, Miss Sherry, agreed the maid respectfully. You know, Parker, I'd like to indulge a whim of mine. Your whims are the household's commands. I'd like to see a lot of simple desserts and choose my dinner from among them. Please bring me a dozen Charlotte Russe, some strawberry shortcake, and a quart of ice cream. Make it chocolate, a dozen ladyfingers, and a box of French chocolates. Very good, Miss Sherry. A drop of water fell on the page. Francie looked up. No, the roof wasn't leaking. It was merely her mouth watering. She was very, very hungry. She went to the stove and looked into the pot. It had a pale bone in it, surrounded by water. There was some bread in the bread box. It was a bit hard, but better than nothing. She cut a slice and poured a cup of coffee and dipped the bread into the coffee to soften it. As she ate, she read what she had just written. She made an astonishing discovery. Look here, Francie Nolan, she told herself. In this story, you're writing exactly the same thing you wrote in those stories Miss Gardner didn't like. Here you're twisting it. You're writing that you're very hungry, only you're writing it in a twisted, roundabout, silly way. Furious with the novel, she ripped the copybook apart and stuffed it into the stove. When the flames began licking on it, her fury increased, and she ran and got her box of manuscripts from under her bed. Carefully putting aside the 4 about her father, she crammed the rest of them into the stove. She was burning all her pretty A compositions. Sentences came out clearer for an instant before a sheet blackened and crumbled. A giant poplar, tall and high, serene and cool against the sky. Another, softly the blue skies arch overhead, 'tis a perfect October day. The end of another sentence. Hollyhocks like distilled sunsets and larkspur like concentrate of heaven. I never saw a poplar, and I read somewhere about the sky arching, and I never saw those flowers except in a seed catalog. And I got A's because I was a good liar. She poked the papers to make them burn faster. As they changed into ashes, she chanted, I am burning ugliness. I am burning ugliness. As the last flame died away, she announced dramatically to the water boiler, there goes my writing career. All of a sudden, she was frightened and lonely. She wanted her father. He couldn't be dead. He just couldn't be. In a little while, he'd come running up the stairs singing Molly Malone. She'd open the door and he'd say, hello, prima donna. And she'd say, Papa, I had a terrible dream. I dreamed you were dead. Then she'd tell him what Miss Gardner had said, and he'd find the words to convince her that everything was all right. She waited, listening. Maybe it was a dream. But no dream lasted that long. It was real. Papa was gone forever. She put her head down on the table and sobbed. Mama doesn't love me the way she loves Neely, she wept. I tried and tried to make her love me. I sit close to her and go wherever she goes and do whatever she asks me to do, but I can't make her love me the way Papa loved me. Then she saw her mother's face in the trolley car when Mama sat with her head back and her eyes closed. She remembered how white and tired Mama had looked. Mama did love her. Of course she did, only she couldn't show it in the ways that Papa could. And Mama was good. Here she expected the baby any minute, and she was still out working. Supposing Mama died when she had the baby? Francie's blood turned icy at the thought. What would Neely and she do without Mama? Where could they go? Evie and Sissy were too poor to take them. They'd have no place to live. They had no one in all the world but Mama. Dear God, Francie prayed, don't let Mama die. I know that I told Neely that I didn't believe in you, but I do. I just said that. Don't punish Mama. She didn't do anything bad. Don't take her away because I said I didn't believe in you. If you let her live, I'll give you my writing. I'll never write another story again if you'll only let her live. Holy Mary, ask your son Jesus to ask God not to let my mother die. Well, that's a game of telephone, isn't it? But she felt that her prayer was of no use. God remembered that she had said that she didn't believe in him, and he'd punish her by taking Mama as he had taken Papa. She became hysterical with terror and thought of her mother as already dead. She rushed out the flat to look for her. Katie wasn't cleaning in their house. She went into the second house and ran up the 3 flights of stairs calling, Mama! She wasn't in that house. Francie went into the third and last house. Mama wasn't on the first floor. Mama wasn't on the second floor. There was 1 floor left. If Mama wasn't there, then she was dead. She screamed, Mama! Mama! I'm up here, came Katie's quiet voice from the 3rd floor. Don't holler so. Francie was so relieved that she all but collapsed. She didn't want her mother to know that she had been crying. She searched for her handkerchief. Not having it, she dried her eyes on her petticoat and walked up the last flight slowly. Hello, Mama. Has something happened to Neely? No, Mama. She always thinks of Neely first. Well, hello then, said Katie, smiling. Katie surmised that something had gone wrong in school to upset Francie. Well, if she wanted to tell her. Do you like me, Mama? I'd be a funny person, wouldn't I, if I didn't like my children? Do you think I'm as good-looking as Neely? She waited anxiously for Mama's answer because she knew that Mama never lied. Mama's answer was a long time in coming. You have very pretty hands and nice, long, thick hair. But do you think I'm as good-looking as Neely? Persisted Francie, wanting her mother to lie. Look, Francie, I know that you're getting at something in a roundabout way, and I'm too tired to figure it out. Have a little patience until after the baby gets here. I like you and Neely, and I think you're both nice enough-looking children. Now please try not to worry me. Francie was instantly contrite. Pity twisted her heart as she saw her mother, so soon to bear a child, sprawled awkwardly on her hands and knees. She knelt beside her mother. Get up, Mama, and let me finish this haul. I have time. She plunged her hand into the pail of water. No, exclaimed Katie sharply. She took Francie's hand out of the water and dried it on her apron. Don't put your hands in that water. It has soda and lye in it. Look what it's done to my hands. She held out her shapely but work-scarred hands. I don't want your hands to get like that. I want you to have nice hands always. Besides, I'm almost finished. If I can't help, can I sit on the stairs and watch? If you've nothing better to do. Francie sat watching her mother. It was so good to be there and know that Mama was alive and close by. Even the scrubbing made a safe, pleasant sound. Swisha, 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 swisha went the brush. Sluppa, sluppa, slup, slup went the rag, wiping up. Clunk, flump went the brush and rag as Mama dropped them into the pail. Scrunk, scrunk went the pail as Mama pushed it to the next area. Haven't you any girlfriends to talk to, Francie? No, I hate women. That's not natural. It would do you good to talk things over with girls your own age. Have you any women friends, Mama? No, I hate women, said Katie. See, you're just like me. But I had a girlfriend once, and I got your father through her, so you see a girlfriend comes in handy sometimes. She spoke jokingly, but her scrub brush seemed to swish out, You go your way, I'll go my way. She fought back her tears. Yes, she continued, you need friends. You never talk to anybody but Neely and me, and read your books and write your stories. I've given up writing. Katie knew then that whatever was on Francie's mind had to do with her compositions. Did you get a bad mark on a composition today? No, lied Francie, amazed as always by her mother's guesswork. She got up. I guess it's time for me to go on to McGarrity's now. Wait. Katie put her brush and scrub rag in the pail. I'm finished for the day. She held out her hands. Help me to get up. Francie grasped her mother's hands. Katie pulled heavily on them as she got to her feet clumsily. Walk back home with me, Francie. Francie carried the pail. Katie put one hand on the banister and put her other arm around Francie's shoulder. She leaned heavily on the girl as she walked downstairs, slowly, Francie keeping time with her mother's uncertain steps. Francie, I expect the baby any day now, and I'll feel better if you are never very far away from me. Stay close to me. And when I'm working, come looking for me from time to time to see that I'm all right. I can't tell you how much I'm counting on you. I can't count on Neely because a boy's no use at a time like this. I need you badly now, and I feel safer when I know you're nearby. So stay close to me for a while. A great tenderness for her mother came into Francie's heart. I won't ever go away from you, Mama, she said. That's my good girl, Katie pressed her shoulder. Maybe, thought Francie, she doesn't love me as much as she loves Neely, but she needs me more than she needs him, and I guess being needed is almost as good as being loved. Maybe better. Okay, chapter 40. 2 days later, Francie came home for lunch and did not return to school in the afternoon. Mama was in bed. After Neely was told to go back to school, Francie wanted to get Sissy or Evie, but Mama said it wasn't time yet. Francie felt important being in sole charge. She cleaned the flat and looked over the food in the house and planned their supper. Every 10 minutes, she plumped up her mother's pillow and asked whether she wanted a drink of water. Soon after 3, Neely rushed in out of breath, flung his books in a corner, and asked whether it was time to run for anybody yet. Katie smiled at his eagerness and said it was no use taking Evie or Sissy away from their own affairs until it was necessary. Neely went off to work with instructions to ask McGarrity if he could do Francie's work as well as his own, since Francie had to stay home with their mother. McGarrity not only agreed, but helped the boy with the free lunch so that Neely was all finished at 4:30. They had supper early. The sooner Neely started with his papers, the quicker he'd be finished. Mama said she didn't want anything except a cup of hot tea. Mama didn't want the tea after Francie brewed it. Francie worried because she wouldn't eat anything. After Neely left on his paper route, Francie brought in a bowl of stew and tried to make her mother eat it. Katie lashed out at her, told her to leave her alone, that when she wanted something to eat, she'd ask for it. Francie poured it back into the pot, trying to hold back the hurt tears. She had only meant to help. Mama called her again and didn't seem mad anymore. What time is it? Asked Katie. 5 to 6. Are you sure the clock isn't slow? No, Mama. Maybe it's fast then. She seemed so worried that Francie looked out the front window at Jeweler Woronov's large street clock. Our clock's right, reported Francie. Is it dark out yet? Katie had no way of knowing, because even at bright noon, only a dull gray light filtered through the air shaft window. No, it's still light outdoors. It's dark in here, said Katie fretfully. I'll light the night candle. Bracketed to the wall was a small shelf holding a plaster statue of the blue-robed Virgin Mary with her hands held out supplicatingly. At the foot of the image was a thick red glass filled with yellow wax and a wick. Next to it was a vase holding paper red roses. Francie put a lighted match to the wick. The candlelight glowed dully and ruby red through the thick glass. What time is it? Katie asked after a little while. 10 after 6. You're sure the clock is neither slow nor fast? Just exactly right. Katie seemed satisfied, but 5 minutes later she again demanded the time. It was as if she had an important rendezvous to keep and was fearful of being late. At 6:30, Francie told her the time again and added that Neely would be home in an hour. The minute he comes in, send him for Aunt Evie. Tell him not to take the time to walk. Find a nickel car fare for him and tell him Evie, because she lives closer than Sissy. Mama, suppose the baby comes all of a sudden and I don't know what to do. I couldn't be that lucky to have a baby all of a sudden. What time is it? 25 to 7. Sure? I'm sure. Mama, even if Neely is a boy, it would have been better if he stayed with you instead of me. Why? Because he's always such a great comfort to you. She said it without malice or jealousy. It was a simple statement of fact. While I just don't know the right things to say to make you feel better. What time is it? A minute after 25 to 7. Katie was silent for a long time. When she spoke, she said the words quietly as if speaking to herself. No, men shouldn't be around at that time, yet women make them stand next to them. They want them to hear every moan and groan and see every drop of blood and hear every tear of the flesh. What is this twisted pleasure they get out of making the man suffer along with them? They seem to be taking revenge because God made them women. What time is it? Without waiting for an answer, she continued, before they're married, they'd die if a man saw them in curl crimpers or with their corsets off. But when they have a baby, they want him to see them in the ugliest way a woman can be seen. I don't know why. A man thinks of the pain and agony that came to her out of their being together, and then it isn't good anymore to him. That's why many men start being unfaithful after the baby. Katie hardly realized what she was saying. She was missing Johnny so terribly, and thinking so to rationalize his not being there. Besides, there is this. If you love someone, you'd rather suffer the pain alone to spare them. So keep your man out of the house when your time comes. Yes, Mama, it's 5 after 7. See if Neely's coming. Francie looked and had to report that Neely wasn't in sight yet. Katie's mind went back to what Francie had said about Neely being a comfort. No, Francie, it's you who's the comfort to me now, she sighed. If it's a boy, we'll call him Johnny. It will be nice, Mama, when there are 4 of us again. Yes, it will. After that, Katie didn't say anything for a while. When next she asked the time, Katie told her it was 7:15 and that Neely would be home soon. Katie instructed her to wrap Neely's nightshirt, a toothbrush, a clean towel, and a bit of soap in a newspaper, as Neely was to remain at Evie's house for the night. Francie made 2 more trips to the street with the bundle under her arm before she saw Neely coming. He was running down the street. She ran to meet him, gave him the bundle, car fare, and instructions, and told him to hurry. How's Mama? He asked. Good. You sure? Sure, I hear a trolley coming. You better run. Neely ran. When Francie got back, she saw that her mother's face was bathed in sweat and that there was blood on her lower lip as though she had bitten through it. Oh, Mama, Mama! She took her mother's hand and held it to her own cheek. Wring a cloth out of cold water and wipe my face, Mama whispered. After Francie had done so, Katie went back to what was incompleted in her mind. Of course you're a comfort to me. Her mind veered off to something that seemed irrelevant, but wasn't. I've always been meaning to read your A compositions, but I never had the time. I've a little more now. Would you like to read one to me? I can't. I burned them all up. You thought about them and wrote them and handed them in and got marks on them and thought about them some more, and then you burned them up. And all through that, I never read one of them. That's all right, Mama. They weren't much good. It's on my conscience. They weren't much good, Mama, and I know you never had the time. Katie thought, but I always had time for anything the boy did. I made time for him. She continued her thought aloud. But then Neely needs more encouragement. You can go on with what you have inside you, like I can, but he needs so much from outside. That's all right, Mama, Francie repeated. I couldn't do any different than I did, said Katie, but it will always be on my conscience just the same. What time is it? Nearly 7:30. The towel again, Francie. Katie's mind seemed to be trying to clutch at something. And isn't there one left you can read? Francie thought of the 4 about her father that Miss Gardner had said what Miss Gardner had said about them and answered no. Then read something from the Shakespeare book. Francie got the book. Read about 'Twas on a night like this. I'd like to have something pretty in my mind just before the baby comes. The print was so small that Francie had to light the gas to read. As the light flared up, she had a good look at her mother's face. It was gray and contorted. Mama didn't look like Mama. She looked like Grandma Mary Romilly in pain. Katie winced away from the light, and Francie shut it off quickly. Mama, we've read these plays so many times over that I almost know them by heart. I don't need a light or the book, Mama. Listen. She recited, "The moon shines bright in such a night as this, when the sweet wind did gently kiss the trees, and they did make no noise in such a night troyless." What time is it? 7:40. Methinks mounted the Trojan walls, and sighed his soul toward the Grecian tents where Cressida lay the night. And did you ever find out who Troilus was, Francie and Cressida? Yes, Mama. Someday you must tell me when I have time to listen. I will, Mama. Katie moaned. Francie wiped the sweat away again. Katie held out her 2 hands as she had done that day in the hall. Francie took the hands and braced her feet. Katie pulled, and Francie thought her arms would come out of their sockets. Then Mama relaxed and let go. So the next hour passed. Francie recited passages she knew by heart. Portia's speech, Mark Antony's funeral oration, Tomorrow and Tomorrow, the obvious things that are remembered from Shakespeare. Sometimes Katie asked a question. Sometimes she put her hands over her face and moaned. Without knowing she did so and taking no note of the answer, she kept asking the time. Francie wiped off her face at intervals, and 3 or 4 times in that hour, Katie held out her 2 hands to Francie. When Evie arrived at 8:30, Francie all but died of pure relief. "And Sissy will be along in half an hour," announced Evie as she rushed into the bedroom. After a look at Katie, Evie pulled the sheet from Francie's cot, knotted one end to Katie's bedpost, and put the other end in Katie's hand. "Try pulling on that for a change," she suggested. "What time is it?" whispered Katie after she had taken a tremendous tug on the sheet. A tug that made the sweat stand out on her face again. "What do you care?" answered Evie cheerfully. "You're not going anyplace." Katie started to smile, but a pain spasm wiped it off her face. "We can do with a better light," decided Evie. "But the gaslight hurts her eyes," objected Francie. Evie took the glass globe from the parlor fixture, coated the outside with soap, and attached it to the bedroom fixture. When she lit the gas, there was a soft, diffuse light without glare. Although it was a warm May night, Evie built a fire in the range. She snapped out orders to Francie. Francie rushed around, filling the kettle with water and placing it over the flames. She scoured the enameled wash basin and poured a bottle of sweet oil in it and set it on the back of the stove. The soiled clothes were dumped out of the wash basket, and it was lined with a ragged but clean blanket and set up on 2 chairs near the stove. The soiled clothes, Evie put all the dinner plates in the oven to heat and instructed Francie to put the hot plates into the basket, remove them when they cooled, and substitute other hot plates. Oh, this technology, huh? "Has your mother any baby clothes?" she asked. "What kind of people do you think we are?" asked Francie scornfully, as she displayed a modest layette consisting of 4 handmade flannel kimonos, 4 bands, a dozen hand-hemmed diapers, and 4 threadbare shirts which she and Neely had worn in turn as babies. "And I made everything myself, excepting the shirts," admitted Francie proudly. I see your mother's looking for a boy," commented Evie, examining the blue feather stitching on the kimonos. "Well, we shall see." When Sissy arrived, the 2 sisters went into the bedroom, ordering Francie to wait outside. Francie listened to them talking. "It's time to get the midwife," Sissy said. "Does Francie know where she lives?" "I didn't make arrangements," Katie said. "There just isn't $5 in the house for a midwife." "Well, maybe Sissy and I can raise the money," began Evie. "Look," Sissy said, "I bore 11 children. You had 3 and Katie had 2. Among us, we had 16 children. We ought to know enough to bring a baby." "All right, we'll bring the baby," decided Evie. Then they closed the bedroom door. Now Francie could hear the sound of their voices but couldn't hear what they said. She resented her aunts shutting her out like that, especially when she had been in complete charge until they came. She took the cool plates from the basket, put them into the oven, and took out 2 heated plates. She felt all alone in the world. She wished that Neely was home so that they could talk about olden times. Oops, gonna have a little quick tea refresher here. Okay, this is scary. Man, they're trying so hard. Francie opened her eyes with a start. She couldn't have been drowsing, she thought. She just couldn't have. She felt the plates in the basket. They were cold. Quickly, she substituted hot plates. The basket had to be kept warm for the baby. She listened to the sounds from the bedroom. They had changed since she nodded. There was no more leisurely moving to and fro, no more quiet talking. Her aunt seemed to be running back and forth with quick, short steps, and their voices came in short sentences. She looked at the clock. 9:30. Evie came out of the bedroom, shutting the door behind her. Here's 50 cents, Francie. Go out and get a 1/4 pound of sweet butter, a box of soda crackers, and 2 navel oranges. Tell the man you want navel. Say they're for a sick lady. But all the stores are closed. Go down to Jewtown. They're always open. I'll go in the morning. Do as you're told, said Evie sharply. Francie went unwillingly. Going down the last flight of stairs, she heard a hoarse, guttural scream. She stopped, undecided whether to run back or to continue. She remembered Evie's sharp command and continued down the stairs. As she reached the door, there was another and more agonized scream. She was glad to get out into the street. Yeah, I could not imagine being around for something like this. I was pretty little when my brother was born, so I wasn't there. Well, not to mention that we do it differently now, right? No anesthesia. I was thinking of that scene in Bridgerton when the mother, Mrs. Bridgerton, is having the baby and she's standing up. And there's that discussion about if she dies to save either the baby or the mother. It was horrible. In one of the flats, the ape-like teamster ordering his unwilling wife to prepare for bed heard Katie's first scream and ejaculated, Jesus! Not that kind of ejaculated. It means he exclaimed. When the second scream came, he said, I hope to Christ you don't keep me awake all night. His childlike bride wept as she unfastened her dress. Flossie Gaddis and her mother were sitting in their kitchen. Floss was sewing on another costume, one of white satin intended for her delayed marriage to Frank. Mrs. Gaddis was knitting on a gray sock for Henny. Henny was dead, of course, but all of his life the mother had knit socks for him and she couldn't let go of the habit. Mrs. Gaddis dropped a stitch when the first scream came. Floss said, the men have all the fun, and the women the pain. The mother said nothing. She trembled next when Katie cried out. It seems funny, said Floss, to be making a costume with 2 sleeves. Yes. They worked a while in silence before Floss spoke again. I wonder, are they worth it? The children, I mean. Mrs. Gaddis thought of her dead son and her daughter's withered arm. She said nothing. She bent her head over her knitting. She had come around to the place where she dropped a stitch. She concentrated on picking it up. Oh my God, that scene is so stressful. Yeah, right? But that's kind of how that was done. The spare Tinsmore spinsters lay in their hard virginal bed. They groped for each other's hands. Did you hear it, sister? Asked Miss Maggie. Her time has come, answered Miss Lizzie. That's why I didn't marry Harvey long ago when he asked me. I was afraid of that. So afraid. I don't know, Miss Lizzie said. Sometimes I think it's better to suffer bitter unhappiness and to fight and to scream out and even to suffer that terrible pain than just to be safe. She waited until the next scream died away. At least she knows she's living. Miss Maggie had no answer. The flat across the hall from the Nolans was vacant. The remaining flat in the house was occupied by a Polish dock walloper, his wife, and their 4 kids. He was filling a glass from a can of beer on the table when he heard Katie. Women, he grunted contemptuously. Shut up, you, snarled his wife. And all the women in the house tensed each time Katie cried out, and they suffered with her. It was the only thing the women held in common, the sure knowledge of the pain of giving birth. Francie had to walk a long way up Manhattan Avenue before she found a Jewish dairy open. She had to go to another store for the crackers and then find a fruit stand that had navel oranges. As she came back, she glanced at the large clock in Knight's drugstore and noticed that it was nearly 10:30. She didn't care what time it was except that it seemed so important to her mother. When she walked into the kitchen, she felt a difference. There was a new quiet feeling and an indefinable smell, new and faintly fragrant. Sissy was standing with her back to the basket. "What do you think?" she said. "You have a baby sister." "Mama, your mother's fine." "So that's why I was sent to the store." "We thought you knew too much already for 14, said Evie, coming out of the bedroom. "I just want to know the one thing," said Francie fiercely. "Did Mama send me out?" "Yes, Francie, she did," said Sissy gently. "She said something about sparing those you love." "All right then," said Francie, mollified. "Don't you want to see the baby?" Sissy stepped aside. Francie lifted the blanket from the baby's head. The baby was a beautiful little thing with white skin and downy black curls which grew down into a point on her forehead like Mama's. The baby's eyes opened briefly. Francie noted that they were a milky blue. Sissy explained that all new babies had blue eyes and that probably they'd be dark as coffee beans when she grew older. "It looks like Mama," Francie decided. "That's what we thought," said Sissy. "Is it all right?" "Perfect," Evie told her. "Not crooked or anything?" "Certainly not. Where do you get such ideas?" Francie didn't tell Evie how she was afraid the baby would be born crooked because Mama had worked on her hands and knees up to the last minute. "May I go in and see Mama?" she asked humbly, feeling like a stranger in her own home. "You can bring the plate in to her." Francie took the plate holding 2 buttered crackers in to her mother. "Hello, Mama." "Hello, Francie." Mama looked like Mama again, only very tired. She couldn't raise her head, so Francie held the crackers while she ate them. After they were gone, Francie stood holding the empty plate. Mama said nothing. It seemed to Francie that she and Mama were strangers again. The closeness of the last few days was gone. "And you had a boy's name picked out, Mama." "Yes, but I don't mind a girl, really." "She's pretty." "She'll have black curling hair, and Neely has blonde curling hair. Poor Francie got the straight brown hair." "I like straight brown hair," Francie said defiantly. She was dying to know the baby's name, but Mama seemed like such a stranger now that she didn't like to ask outright. "Shall I write the information out to send to the Board of Health?" "No, the priest will send it in when she's christened." "Oh!" Katie recognized the disappointment in Francie's tone. "But bring in the ink and the book and I'll let you write down her name." Francie took the Gideon Bible that Sissy had swiped nearly 15 years ago from the mantelpiece. She looked at the 4 entries on the flyleaf. The first 3 were in Johnny's fine, careful hand. January 1, 1901, married, Catherine Romilly and John Nolan. December 15, 1901, born, Francis Nolan. December 23, 1902, born, Cornelius Nolan. The 4th entry was in Katie's firm backhand slant. December 25th, 1915, died John Nolan, age 34. Oh gosh, it was on Christmas Day. Sissy and Evie followed Francie into the bedroom. They, too, were curious as to what Katie would name the baby. Sarah? Eva? Ruth? Elizabeth? "Write this down," Katie dictated. May 28, 1916. Born. Francie dipped her pen in the ink bottle. Annie Laurie Nolan. Oh gosh, I have chills. "Annie, such an ordinary name," groaned Sissy. "Why, Katie, why?" demanded Evie patiently. "A song that Johnny sang once," explained Katie. As Francie wrote the name, she heard the chords. She heard her father singing, and 'twas there that Annie Laurie... "Papa, Papa," a song he said that belonged to a better world, Katie went on. He would have liked the child named after one of his songs. "Laurie is a pretty name," said Francie, and Laurie became the baby's name. Wow. That's powerful. I'm have a little bite. I'm just grateful that everyone came out okay. That everything came out okay. Gosh. Phew, you were worried too. Yeah, I was worried. Even though I've read this book before, I forgot. Okay. Lori was a good baby. She slept contentedly most of the time. When she was awake, she put in the time lying quietly and trying to focus her berry brown eyes on her infinitesimal fist. Katie nursed the baby not only because it was the instinctive thing to do, but because there was no money for fresh milk. Since the baby couldn't be left alone, Katie started her work at 5 in the morning, doing the other two houses first. She worked until nearly 9 when Francie and Neely left for school. Then she cleaned her own house, leaving the door of her flat ajar in case Lori cried. Katie went to bed immediately after supper each night, and Francie saw so little of her mother that it seemed as if Mama had gone away. I cannot believe she went back to work right away. McGarity didn't fire them after the baby's birth as he had planned. He really needed them now because his business boomed suddenly in the spring of 1916. His saloon was crowded all the time. Great changes were taking place in the country, and his customers, like Americans everywhere, had to get together to talk things over. The corner saloon was their only gathering place, the poor man's club. Francie, working in the flat above the saloon, heard their raised voices through the thin floorboards. Often she paused in her work and listened. Yes, the world was changing rapidly, and this time she knew it was the world and not herself. She heard the world changing as she listened to the voices. It's a fact. They're going to stop making liquor, and in a few years the country will be dry. A man that works hard has a right to his beer. Tell that to the president and see how far you get. This is a people's country. If we don't want it dry, it won't be dry. Sure, it's a people's country, but they're going to push prohibition down your throat. By Jesus, I'll make my own wine then. My old man used to make it in the old country. You take a bushel of grapes. Go on, they'll never give women the vote. Don't lay any bets on it. If that comes, my wife votes like I do, otherwise I'll break her neck. My old woman wouldn't go to the polls and mix in with a bunch of bums and rummies. A woman president, that might be. They'll never let a woman run the government. There's one running it right now. Like hell. Wilson can't turn around and go to the bathroom unless he asks Mrs. Wilson if it's okay by her. Wilson's an old woman himself. He's keeping us out of war. That college professor. What we need in the White House is a sound politician and not a school teacher. Automobiles. Soon the horse will be a thing of the past. That feller out in Detroit's making cars so cheap that soon every working man can have one. A laborer driving his own car, you should live so long. Airplanes, just a crazy fad, won't last long. The moving pictures is here to stay. The Theaters is closing up one by one in Brooklyn. The Theaters. The Theaters is closing up one by one in Brooklyn. Take me, I'd rather see this here Charlie Chaplin any day than this here corset Peyton the wife goes for. Wireless, greatest thing ever invented. Words come through the air, mind you, without wires. You need a kind of machine to catch it and earphones to listen in. They call it twilight sleep, and a woman don't feel a thing when the kid comes. So when this friend tells my wife, she says that it's about time they invented something like that. What are you talking about? Gaslight's out of date. They're putting electricity even in the cheapest tenements. Don't know what's got into the youngsters nowadays. They're all dance crazy. Dance, dance, dance. So I changed my name from Schultz to Scott. The judge says, what do you want to go and do that for? Schultz is a good name. He was German himself, see. Listen, Mac, I says. That's just how I talk to him. Judge or no judge. I'm through with the old country, I says. After what they done to them Belgian babies, I says, I want no part of Germany. I'm an American now, I says, and I want an American name. And we're heading straight for war. Man, I can see it coming. All we got to do is elect Wilson again this fall. He'll keep us out of war. Don't bet on them campaign promises. When you got a Democrat president, you got a war president. Lincoln was a Republican. But the South had a Democrat president, and they was the ones started the Civil War. I ask you, how long we gotta stand for it? The bastards sunk another one of our ships. How many do they gotta sink before we get up enough nerve to go over there and lick hell out of them? We got to stay out. This country's getting along fine. Let them fight their own wars without dragging us in. We don't want war. War's declared, I'll enlist the next day. You can talk, you're past 50, they wouldn't take you. I'd sooner go to jail than to war. A feller's got to fight for what he thinks is right. I'd be glad to go. I got nothing to worry about, I've got a double hernia. Let the war come, they'll need us working men then to build their ships and their guns. They'll need the farmer to grow their food. Then watch them come sucking around us. Us laborers will have the goddamn capitalists by the throat. They won't tell us. We'll tell them. By Jesus, we'll make them sweat. War can't come quick enough to suit me. Like I'm telling you, everything is machines. I heard a joke the other day. Feller and his wife going around getting food, clothes, everything out of machines. So they come to this baby machine and the feller puts his money in and out comes a baby. So the feller turns around and says, "Give me the good old days." The good old days, yeah, I guess they're gone forever. Fill 'em up again, Jim. And Francie, pausing in her sweeping to listen, tried to put everything together and tried to understand a world spinning in confusion. And it seemed to her that the whole world changed in between the time that Lori was born and graduation day. Oh, hey, welcome in, Dead Chrome. Can we get a shout out for our buddy Dead Chrome, who's lurking? Thanks for the lurk. This is a great lurkable type of stream, isn't it? Meanwhile, in between chapters here, I'm going to have a little bit of these. Oh, hello. There it is. Right on top of my honey glazed peanuts. So I got these honey glazed peanuts. I think I took too many of them today. So I will definitely not eat all of these. They're pretty filling, you know, between being full of protein and also having a sugar all over. Yeah, welcome in. Thanks for doing the shout out. Okay, we'll read all the way to the end of book 3, which is really only a few pages. And it's when they go to war. Or I should say, when we went to war. Let's make some more tea. I mean, if we feel like we want to go further, we can. There's no particular reason to stop there. But. So yeah, I hope y'all are enjoying this story. I'll say it again. If anyone didn't hear earlier, I am editing the videos of these streams, this series. They're a lot shorter because there's less chit chat and just mostly the story, you know, as much as I can. And I'm putting them on YouTube one at a time. So episode 1 will be out tomorrow. And then, you know, I've just got to kind of stay on top of it and do each episode, maybe put one out per week or something like that so that you guys can catch up if you haven't. Today is actually episode 5. So if you don't know the story and you want to catch up, that is available. Will be available to you. And just above in the chat, and periodically, I don't know, every 20 minutes or something, there's a message that gives you the link to my YouTube channel. I did release another video over the weekend, and it was just a tea one. If I remember right, I think we made some wax seals too, but it wasn't a book reading. But book reading will be out tomorrow morning. You've missed bits and pieces of the book, so you'll keep... Okay, great. I know there'll be a few people who want to listen, or you can use it to go to sleep, you know, for all I care. Use it however you want. I will apologize though, and I did in the description of the video. You can't hear the music at all. I just had it turned down too low. And I'm thinking that possibly episode 1 and 2 might be like that, but definitely episode 1. It's got, you know, definitely the music was playing. There's the now playing is going, you know, scrolling along, but you cannot hear the music. Maybe with headphones, maybe you'll be able to. It's okay, I'll play Johnny Bailey in another tab. That could work. Yeah. I just didn't, it was unbalanced. And I didn't realize it until after 1 or 2 streams later when I listened back and I was like, oh my God, you can't even hear the music at all. Okay, here we go. It's a really key part of the stream, isn't it? I know there are people who stream without music, but for me, like, it's just, I can't even imagine just doing the stream without music. To me, it's a key part of the atmosphere that we create for this particular stream. Okay, chapter 42. Francie hardly had time to get used to Lori when graduation night came around. Katie couldn't go to both graduations, so it was decided that she'd go to Neely's. And that was right. Neely shouldn't be deprived because Francie had felt like changing schools. Francie understood but felt a bit hurt just the same. Papa would have gone to see her graduate if he were living. They arranged that Sissy go with Francie. Evie would stay with Lori. On the last night in June 1916, Francie walked for the last time to the school she so loved. Sissy, quiet and changed since she got her baby, walked sedately beside her. 2 firemen passed and Sissy never so much as noticed, and there had been a time when Sissy couldn't resist a uniform. Francie wished Sissy hadn't changed. It made her feel lonesome. Her hand crept into Sissy's and Sissy squeezed it. Francie was comforted. Sissy was still Sissy underneath. The graduates sat in the front part of the auditorium and the guests in the back. The principal made an earnest speech to the children about how they were going out into a troubled world and about how it would be up to them to build a new world after the war, which was sure to come to America. He urged them on to higher education so that they would be better equipped for this world building. Francie was impressed and vowed in her heart that she'd help carry the torch like he said. Then came the graduation play. Francie's eyes burned with unshed tears. As the diluted dialogue droned on, she thought, my play would have been better. I would have taken the ash can out. I would have done whatever teacher said if she had only let me write the play. After the play, they marched up, got their diplomas, and were graduates at last. The oath of allegiance to the flag and the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner clinched it. And now came the time of Francie's Gethsemane. It was the custom to present bouquets to the girl graduates. Since flowers were not allowed in the auditorium, they were delivered to the classrooms where the teachers placed them on the recipient's desk. Francie had to go back to her room to get her report card, also her pencil box and autograph book from her desk. She stood outside, nerving herself for the ordeal, knowing her desk would be the only one without flowers. She was sure because she hadn't told Mama about the custom, knowing there was no money at home for such things. Deciding to get it over with, she went in and walked straight to the teacher's desk, not daring to look at her own. The air was thick with flower scents. She heard the girls chattering and squealing with delight over their flowers. She heard the exchange of triumphant admiration. She got her report card, 4 A's and 1 C-. The latter was her English mark. She used to be the best writer in school, and here she ended up barely passing English. Suddenly, she hated the school and all the teachers, especially Miss Gardner. And she didn't care about not getting flowers. She didn't care. It was a silly custom anyway. I'll go to my desk and get my things, she decided, and if anyone speaks to me, I'll tell them to shut up. And then I'll walk out of this school forever and not say goodbye to anyone. She raised her eyes. The desk without flowers on it will be mine. But there were no empty desks. There were flowers on every single one. Francie went to her desk, reasoning that a girl had placed one of her bouquets there for a moment. Francie planned to pick it up and hand it to the owner, saying coolly, "Do you mind? I have to get something out of my desk." She picked up the flowers, 24 dark red roses on a sheaf of ferns. She cradled them in her arm the way the other girls did and pretended for a moment that they were hers. She looked for the owner's name on the card, but her own name was on the card. Her name. The card said, "For Francie on graduation day, love from Papa." Papa. Get your handkerchiefs, huh? The writing was in his fine, careful hand. in the black ink from the bottle in the cupboard at home. Then it was all a dream, a long mixed-up dream. Lori was a dream, and the working at McGarrity's, and the graduation play, and the bad mark in English. She was waking up now, and everything would be all right. Papa would be waiting out in the hall. But there was only Sissy in the hall. Then Papa is dead, she said. Yes, said Sissy, and it's 6 months now. But he can't be, Aunt Sissy. He sent me flowers. Francie, about a year ago, he gave me that card all written out and $2. He said, when Francie graduates, send her some flowers for me in case I forget. Francie started to cry. It wasn't only because she was sure now that nothing was a dream. It was because she was unstrung from working too hard and worrying about Mama, because she didn't get to write the graduation play, because she got a bad mark in English, because she had been too well prepared not to receive flowers. Sissy took her to the girls' washroom and pushed her into a booth. Cry loud and hard, she ordered, and hurry up. Your mother will be wondering what's keeping us. That wasn't intentional. I thought you liked to eat flowers or something for a second there. Yummy flowers. Oh. Francie stood in the booth, clutching her roses and sobbing. Each time the washroom door opened and chattering announced incoming girls, she flushed the toilet so that the noise of the water would drown out her sobs. Soon she was over it. When she came out, Sissy had a handkerchief wet with cold water to hand her. As Francie mopped her eyes, Sissy asked whether she felt better. Francie nodded yes, and begged her to wait a moment while she said her goodbyes. She went into the principal's office and shook hands with him. Don't forget the old school, Francis. Come back and see us sometime, he said. I will, promised Francie. She went back to say goodbye to her classroom teacher. We'll miss you, Francis, said teacher. Teacher whose name was Teacher. Francie got her pencil box and autograph book from her desk. She started to say goodbye to the girls. They crowded around her. One put her arm around her waist and 2 others kissed her cheek. They called out goodbye messages. Come to my house to see me, Francis. Write to me, Francis, and let me know how you're getting along. Francis, we have a telephone now. Ring me up sometime. Ring me up tomorrow. Write something in my autograph book, huh, Francis, so as I can sell it when you get famous. I'm going to summer camp. I'll put down my address. Write to me. Here, Francis? I'm going to Girls High in September. You come to Girls High too, Francis. No, come to Eastern District High with me. Girls High, Eastern District. Erasmus Hall High's the best. You come there, Francis, with me, and we'll be friends all through high school. I'll never have any other friend but you if you'll come. Francis, you never let me write in your autograph book. Me neither. Gimme. They wrote in Francie's all but empty book. They're nice, Francie thought. I could have been friends with them all the time. I thought they didn't want to be friends. It must have been me that was wrong. They wrote in the book. Some wrote small and cramped, others loose and sprawling, but all the writing was the handwriting of children. Francie read as they wrote. I wish you luck, I wish you joy, I wish you first a baby boy, and when his hair begins to curl, I wish you then a baby girl, Florence Fitzgerald. When you are married and your husband gets cross, sock him with the poker and get a divorce. Jeannie Lee. They are children. When night draws back the curtain and pins it with a star, remember I am still your friend, though you may wander far. Noreen O'Leary. Beatrice Williams turned to the last page in the book and wrote, way back here and out of sight, I signed my name just for spite. She signed it, your fellow writer, Beatrice Williams. She would say fellow writer, thought Francie, still jealous about the play. Francie got away at last. Out in the hall, she said to Sissy, just one more goodbye. It's taking you the longest time to graduate, protested Sissy good-naturedly. Miss Gardner sat at her desk in her brilliantly lighted room. She was alone. She wasn't popular, and so far no one had been in to say goodbye. She looked up eagerly as Francie entered. So you've come to say goodbye to your old English teacher, she said, pleased. Yes, ma'am. Miss Gardner couldn't let it go at that. She had to be a teacher. About your mark, you haven't turned in work this term. I should have failed you, but at the last moment I decided to pass you so that you could graduate with your class. She waited. Francie said nothing. Well, aren't you going to thank me? Thank you, Miss Gardner. You remember our little chat? Yes, ma'am. Why did you turn stubborn and stop handing in work then? Francie had nothing to say. It was something she couldn't explain to Miss Gardner. She held out her hand. Goodbye, Miss Gardner. Miss Gardner was taken aback. Well, goodbye then, she said. They shook hands. In time to come, you'll see I was right, Frances. Francie said nothing. Won't you? Miss Gardner asked sharply. Yes, ma'am. Francie went out of the room. She did not hate Miss Gardner anymore. She didn't like her, but she felt sorry for her. Miss Gardner had nothing in all the world excepting a sureness about how right she was. Mr. Jensen stood on the school steps. He took each child's hand in both of his and said, Goodbye and God bless you. He added a personal message for Francie. Be good, work hard, and reflect credit on our school. Francie promised that she would. I think he was the custodian? The nice man in the furnace room? On the way home, Sissy said, Look, let's not tell your mother who sent the flowers. It will start her to remembering, and she's just about getting well after Lori. They agreed to say that Sissy bought the flowers. Francie removed the card and put it in her pencil box. Francie had no interest in retaining that teacher's name. Jeannie Lee is iconic. Yeah. Hit him with a, what was it? Hit him with the poker. Sock him with the poker. When they told Mama the lie about the flower, she said, Sissy, you shouldn't have spent your money. But Francie could tell that Mama was pleased. The 2 diplomas were admired, and everyone agreed that Francie's was the prettiest on account of Mr. Jensen's fine handwriting. But first diplomas in the Nolan family, said Katie. But not the last, I hope, said Sissy. I'm going to see to it that each of my children have 3, said Evie. Grade school, high school, and college. In 25 years, said Sissy, our family will have a stack of diplomas this high. She stood on tiptoe and measured 6 feet from the ground. Mama examined the report cards for the last time. Neely had B in conduct, the same in physical education, and C in all his other subjects. Mama said, That's good, son. She looked past Francie's A's and concentrated on the C-. Francie, I'm surprised. How did this happen? Mama, I don't want to talk about it. And in English, too, your best subject. Francie's voice notched up higher as she repeated, Mama, I don't want to talk about it. She always wrote the best compositions in school, explained Katie to her sisters. Mama! It was almost a scream. Katie, stop it, ordered Sissy sharply. All right then, surrendered Katie, suddenly aware that she was nagging and ashamed of herself. Evie jumped in with a change of subject. Do we have that party or don't we? She asked. I'm putting my hat on, Katie said. Sissy stayed with Lori while Evie, Mama, and the 2 graduates went to Sheafley's Ice Cream Saloon for the party. Well, that sounds like a fun place. Sheafley's was crowded with graduation parties. The kids had their diplomas with them, and the girls brought their bouquets. There was a mother or a father, sometimes both, at each table. The Nolan party found a free table at the back of the room. The place was a medley of shouting kids, beaming parents, and rushed waiters. And motorcycles. Sorry. Some kids were 13, a few 15, but most of them Francie's age, 14. Most of the boys were Neely's classmates, and he had a great time hollering greetings across the room. Francie hardly knew the girls. Nevertheless, she waved and called out to them as gaily as though they had been close friends for years. Francie was proud of Mama. The other mothers had graying hair, and most of them were so fat that their backsides slopped over the edges of the chair. Mama was slender and didn't look at all like going on 33. Her skin was as smoothly clear and her hair as black and curling as it had ever been. Put her in a white dress, thought Francie, with a bunch of roses in her arms, and she'd look like any 14-year-old graduate, except for the line between her eyes that cut deeper since Papa died. They ordered. Francie had a mental list of all the soda flavors. She was going down the list so that she could say she had tasted all the kinds of sodas in the world. Pineapple was next, and she ordered that. Neely ordered the old standby chocolate soda, and Katie and Evie chose plain vanilla ice cream. Evie made up little stories about the people in the place and kept Francie and Neely laughing. Francie studied their mother from time to time. Mama wasn't smiling at Evie's jokes. She ate her ice cream slowly, and the line between her eyes deepened, and Francie knew that she was figuring something out. My children, thought Katie, have more education at 13 and 14 than I have at 32. And still, it isn't enough. When I think of how ignorant I was at their age. Yes, and even though I was married and had a baby, imagine. I believed in witches' charms then, what the midwife told me about the woman in the fish market. They started in way ahead of me. They were never that ignorant. I got them graduated from grade school. I can't do more for them. At all my plans, Neely, a doctor, Francie in college, can't work them out now. The baby, have they enough in them to get somewhere alone? I don't know. The Shakespeare, the Bible, they know how to play piano, but they've stopped practicing now. I taught them to be clean and truthful and not to take charity. Is that enough, though? They'll have a boss to please soon, and new people to get along with. They'll get into other ways. Good? Bad? They won't sit home with me nights if they work all day. Neely will be off with his friends. And Francie? Reading, away to the library, a show, a free lecture or band concert. Of course, I'll have the baby. The baby. She'll get a better start. When she graduates, the other two might see her through high school. I must do better for Lori than I did for them. They never had enough to eat. Never had right clothes. The best I could do wasn't enough. And now they have to go out to work and they're still little children. Oh, if I could only get them into high school this fall. Please, God. I'll give 20 years off my life. I'll work night and day. But I can't, of course. No one to stay with the baby. Her thoughts were broken into by a wave of singing that rolled over the room. Someone started a popular anti-war song and the rest took it up. I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. I brought him up to be my pride and joy. And there's a footnote on this one. Didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. Words by Alfred Bryan. Music by, copyright 1915. It's just basically a copyright notice at the bottom there. Katie resumed her thoughts. There is no one to help us, no one. She thought briefly of Sergeant McShane. He had sent a big basket of fruit when Lori was born. She knew he was retiring from the police force in September. He was going to run for assemblyman from Queens, his home borough, next election. Everyone said he'd be sure to get in. She had heard that his wife was very sick, might not live to see her husband elected. He'll marry again, thought Katie, of course. Some woman who knows all about social life. Help him the way a politician's wife must. She stared at her work-worn hands for a long time, then put them under the table as though she were ashamed of them. Francie noticed. She's thinking of Sergeant McShane, she guessed, remembering how Mama had put on her cotton gloves that time long ago at the outing when McShane had looked at her. He likes her, thought Francie. I wonder, does she know it? She must. She seems to know everything. I bet she could marry him if she wanted to. But he needn't think I'd ever call him father. My father is dead, and no matter who Mama marries, he will only be Mr. So-and-so to me. They were finishing the song. There'd be no wars today if mothers all would say, I didn't raise my boy to be a soldier. Neely, thought Katie, 13. If war does come here, it will be over before he gets old enough to go, thank God. Now Aunt Evie was singing softly to them, making up a parody of the song. Who dares to place a mustache on his shoulder? Aunt Evie, you're terrible, said Francie, as she and Neely screamed with laughter. Katie jerked out of her thoughts and looked up and smiled. When the waiter laid down the check and they all grew silent, watching Katie. I hope she's not fool enough to tip him, thought Evie. Does Mama know you're supposed to leave a nickel tip, thought Neely. I hope so. Whatever Mama does, thought Francie, it will be the right thing. It wasn't the custom to tip in the ice cream saloons except on special parties when you were supposed to leave a nickel. Katie saw that the check was for 30 cents. She had one coin in her old purse. It was a 50-cent piece, which she laid on the check. The waiter took it away and brought back 4 nickels, which she laid in a row. He hovered nearby, waiting for Katie to pick up 3 of them. She looked at the 4 nickels. 4 loaves of bread, she thought. 4 pairs of eyes watched Katie's hand. Katie never hesitated once. She put her hand on the money. With a sure gesture, she pushed the 4 nickels toward the waiter. "Keep the change," she said grandly. Francie had all she could do not to stand up on her chair and cheer. "Mama is somebody," she kept saying to herself. The waiter scooped up the nickels happily and rushed away. 2 sodas shot, groaned Neely. Katie, how foolish," protested Evie. "I bet it's your last money, too." "It is, but it may be our last graduation, too." "McGarity pays us $4 tomorrow," said Francie, defending her mother. "And he fires us tomorrow, too," added Neely. "There'll be no money after that $4 until they get jobs then," concluded Evie. "I don't care," said Katie. "For once, I wanted us to feel like millionaires. And if 20 cents can make us feel rich, it's a cheap price to pay." Evie recalled how Katie let Francie pour her coffee down the sink and said nothing more. There are many things she didn't understand about her sister. The parties were breaking up. Albie Seedmore, the leggy son of a prosperous grocer, came over to their table. A grocer. "Go to the movies with me tomorrow, Francie?" he asked, all on a breath. "I'll pay," he added hastily. A movie house was letting the graduates attend the Sunday matinee 2 for a nickel, providing they brought their diplomas along as proof. Francie looked at her mother. Mama nodded her consent. "Sure, Albie," accepted Francie. "See you, too, tomorrow," he loped off. "Your first date," said Evie. "Make a wish." She held out her little finger and crooked it. Francie hooked her little finger into Aunt Evie's. "I wish I could always wear a white dress and carry red roses, and that we could always throw money around like we did tonight," wished Francie. And that's the end of book 3. Okay, chapter 43. Francie goes to work. "You got the idea now," said the forelady to Francie. "You'll make a good stemmer in time." She went away and Francie was on her own, the first hour of the first day of her first job. Following the forelady's instructions, her left hand picked up a foot length of shiny wire. Simultaneously, her right hand picked up a narrow strip of dark green tissue paper. She touched the end of the strip to a damp sponge, then using the thumb and first 2 fingers of each hand as a rolling machine, she wound the paper on the wire. She placed the covered wire aside. It was now a stem. At intervals, Mark, the pimply-faced utility boy, distributed the stems to the peddlers who wired paper rose petals to them. Another girl strung up a calyx, or is it calyx? I never have figured that out yet. Up under the rose and turned it over to the leafer who pried a unit, 3 dark glossy leaves on a short stem, from a block of leaves, wired the unit to the stem, and turned the rose over to the finisher who wound a strip of heavier textured green paper around the calyx and down the stem. The stem, calyx, rose, and leaves were now one and seemed to have grown so. Francie's back hurt and a shooting pain ran through her shoulder. She must have covered 1,000 stems, she figured. Surely it was time for lunch. She turned around to look at the clock and found that she had been working just 1 hour. "Clock watcher," commented a girl derisively. Francie stood up, startled, but said nothing. She got a rhythm to her work, and it seemed to come easier. 1, she set aside the covered wire. And a half, she picked up a new wire and a strip of paper. 2, she moistened the paper. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The wire was covered. Soon the rhythm became instinctive. She didn't have to count, and it wasn't necessary to concentrate. Her back relaxed and her shoulders stopped aching. Her mind was freed and she started to figure things out. This could be a whole life, she thought. You work 8 hours a day covering wires to earn money, to buy food, and to pay for a place to sleep so that you can keep living to come back to cover more wires. Some people are born and kept living just to come to this. Of course, some of these girls will marry men who have the same kind of life. What will they gain? They'll gain someone to hold conversations with in the few hours at night between work and sleep. But she knew the gain wouldn't last. She had seen too many working couples who, after the children came and the bills piled up, rarely communicated with each other except in bitter snarls. These people are caught, she thought. And why? Because, remembering her grandmother's repeated convictions, they haven't got enough education. Fright grew in Francie. Maybe it would be so that she'd never get to high school. Maybe she'd never have more education than she had at that moment. Maybe all her life she'd have to cover wires. Cover wires. 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The same unreasoning terror came on her that had come when, as an 11-year-old child, she had seen the old man with the obscene feet in Loescher's bakery. In her panic, she speeded up her rhythm so that she'd have to concentrate on her work and not have room to think. New broom, observed a finisher cynically. Trying to make a hit with the boss, was the opinion of a peddler. Soon even the speeding up became automatic, and again Francie's mind was free. Covertly, she studied the girls at the long table. There were a dozen of them, Poles and Italians. The youngest looked 16, and the oldest 30, and all were swarthy. For some unaccountable reason, all wore black dresses, evidently not realizing how unbecoming black was to dark skins. Francie was the only one wearing a gingham wash dress, and she felt like a silly baby. The sharp-eyed workers noticed her quick stares and retaliated with their own peculiar brand of hazing. The girl at the head of the table started it. "Somebody at this table has got a dirty face," she announced. "Not me," answered the others one by one. When Francie's turn came, they stopped work and waited. Not knowing what to answer, Francie remained silent. "New girl says nothing," summarized the ringleader, "so she's got the dirty face." Francie's face got hot, but she worked faster, hoping they'd drop the whole thing. "Somebody has got a dirty neck." It started all over again. "Not me," answered the girls in order. When it came to Francie's turn, she too said, "Not me." But instead of appeasing them, it gave them more material to work with. "New girl says her neck ain't dirty." "She says." "How does she know? Can she see her own neck? Would she admit it if it was dirty?" "They want me to do something," puzzled Francie, "but what? Do they want me to get mad and curse at them? Do they want me to give up this job? Or do they want to see me cry the way that little girl did long ago when I watched her clean the blackboard erasers? Whatever they want, I won't do it." She bent her head over the wires and made her fingers fly faster. The tiresome game went on all morning. The only respites were when Mark, the utility boy, came in. Then they let up on Francie a little in order to work on him. "New girl, watch out for Mark," they warned her. He was arrested twice for rape and once for white slavery. The accusations were crudely ironical, considering the obvious effeminacy of Mark. Francie saw how the unfortunate boy flushed a brick red at each taunt, and she felt sorry for him. The morning wore on. When it seemed that it would never end, a bell rang announcing lunchtime. The girls dropped their work, hauled out paper bags of lunch, ripped the bags open to form a tablecloth, spread out their onion-garnished sandwiches, and started to eat. Francie's hands were hot and sticky. She wanted to wash them before she ate, so she asked her neighbor where the washroom was. "No speak English," answered the girl in exaggerated greenhorn dialect. "Nix verstand," said another who had been taunting her in idiomatic English all morning. "What's a washroom?" asked the fat girl. "Where they make washers," replied a wit. Mark was collecting boxes. He stood in the doorway, his arms laden, made his Adam's apple go up and down twice, and Francie heard him speak for the first time. "Jesus Christ died on the cross for people like you," he announced passionately, "and now you won't show a new girl where the turlet is." Francie stared at him, astonished. Then she couldn't help it. It had sounded so funny. She burst out laughing. Mark gulped, turned, and disappeared down the hall. Everything changed then. A murmur ran round the table. "She laughed!" "Hey, the new girl laughed! Laughed!" A young Italian girl linked her arm in Francie's and said, "Come on, new girl, I'll show you the turlet." I mean, that's a pretty funny thing to say, Mark. In the washroom, she turned on the water for Francie, punched down on the glass bowl of liquid soap, and hovered over Francie solicitously while she washed her hands. When Francie would have dried her hands on the snowy, obviously unused roller towel, her guide snatched her away. "Don't use that towel, new girl." "Why? It looks clean." "It's dangerous. Some of the girls working here is clappy, and you'll catch it if you use the towel." What'll I do? Francie waved her wet hands. Use your petticoat like we do. Francie dried her hands on her petticoat, eyeing the deadly towel with horror. Back in the washroom, she found that they had flattened her paper bag and set out the 2 bologna sandwiches Mama had fixed for her. She saw that someone had placed a nice red tomato on her paper. The girls welcomed her back with smiles. The one who had led the taunts all morning took a long swig out of a whiskey bottle and then passed it to Francie. Take a drink, new girl, she ordered. Them sandwiches is dry going down alone. Francie shrank back and declined hastily. Go ahead, it's only cold tea. Francie thought of the washroom towel and shook her head no emphatically. Ah, exclaimed the girl. I know why you don't drink from my bottle. In the turlet, Anastasia scared you. Don't you believe her, new girl? The boss started that clappy talk himself so we wouldn't use the towels. That way he saves a couple dollars each week on laundry. Clappy. Yeah, said Anastasia. I don't see none of yous using the towel. Hell, we only got half an hour for lunch. Who wants to go waste time washing hands? Drink up, new girl. Francie took a long drink from the bottle. The cold tea was strong and refreshing. She thanked the girl and then tried to thank the donor of the tomato. Immediately, each girl in turn denied giving it. What are you talking about? What tomato? Don't see no tomato. New girl brings a tomato for lunch and don't even remember. So they teased her. But now there was something warmly companionable about the teasing. Francie enjoyed the lunch period and was glad she had found out what they wanted from her. They had just wanted her to laugh, such a simple thing and so hard to find out. The rest of the day passed pleasantly. The girls told her not to break her neck, that it was seasonable work and they'd all be laid off when the fall orders had been made up. The quicker the orders were finished, the sooner they'd be fired. Francie, pleased at being taken into the confidence of these older, more experienced workers, obligingly slowed down. They told jokes all afternoon, and Francie laughed at them all, whether they were funny or just plain dirty. And her conscience bothered her only a little bit when she joined the others in tormenting Mark, the martyr, who didn't know that if he would laugh but once, his troubles in the shop would be over. It was a few minutes past noon on Saturday. Francie stood at the foot of the Flushing Avenue station of the Broadway L, waiting for Neely. She held an envelope containing $5, her first week's pay. Neely was bringing home $5 too. They had agreed to arrive home together and make a little ceremony out of giving the money to Mama. Neely worked as an errand boy in a downtown New York brokerage house. Sissy's John had gotten him the job through a friend already working there. Francie envied Neely. Each day he crossed the great Williamsburg Bridge and went into the strange big city, while Francie walked to her work on the north side of Brooklyn. And Neely ate in a restaurant. Like Francie, he had brought his lunch the first day, but the boys made fun of him, calling him the country boy from Brooklyn. After that, Mama gave him 15 cents a day for lunch. He told Francie how he ate in a place called the Automat, where you put a nickel in a slot and coffee and cream came out together. Not too little, not too much, just a cupful. Francie wished she could ride across the bridge to work and eat in the Automat instead of carrying sandwiches from home. Neely ran down the L steps. He carried a flat package under his arm. Francie noticed how he put his feet down at an angle so that the whole foot was on the step instead of just the heel part. This gave him sure footing. Papa had always come downstairs that way. Neely wouldn't tell Francie what was in the package, saying that would spoil the surprise. They stopped in a neighborhood bank, which was just about to close for the day, and asked the teller to give them new $1 bills in exchange for their old money. What do you want new bills for? Asked the teller. It's our first pay and we'd like to bring it home in new money, explained Francie. First pay, eh? Said the teller. That takes me back. It certainly takes me back. I remember when I took home my first pay. I was a boy at the time, working on a farm in Manhasset, Long Island. Well, sir, he went off into a biographical sketch whilst people in line shuffled impatiently. He ended, and when I turned my first pay over to my mother, the tears stood in her eyes. Yes, sir, the tears stood in her eyes. Can you imagine a bank teller doing that nowadays? He tore the wrapper from a bundle of new bills and exchanged their old money. Then he said, and here's a present for you. He gave each a fresh minted, gold-looking penny, which he took from the cash drawer. New 1916 pennies, he explained. The first in the neighborhood. Don't spend them now. Save them. He took 2 old coppers from his pocket and put them in the drawer to make up the deficiency. Francie thanked him. As they moved away, she heard the man next in line say, as he leaned his elbow on the ledge, I remember when I brought my first pay home to my old lady. As they went out, Francie wondered whether everyone in line would tell about his first pay. Everyone who works, said Francie, has this one thing together. They remember about bringing home their first pay. Yeah, agreed Neely. As they turned a corner, Francie mused, and the tears stood in her eyes. She had never heard that expression before, and it caught her fancy. How could that be, Neely wanted to know. Tears have no legs. They can't stand. He didn't mean that. He meant it like when people say, I stood in bed all day. But stood is no word that way. It is so, countered Francie. Here in Brooklyn, stood is like the past tense of stay. I guess so, agreed Neely. Let's walk down Manhattan Avenue instead of Graham. Neely, I have an idea. Let's make a tin can bank without telling Mama and nail it in your closet. We'll start it off with these new pennies, and if Mama gives us any spending money, we'll each put 10 cents in every week. We'll open at Christmas and buy presents for Mama and Lori. And for us too, stipulated Neely. Yeah, I'll buy one for you and you buy one for me. I'll tell you what I want when the time comes. It was agreed. They walked briskly, outdistancing loitering kids homeward bound from the junk shops. They looked towards Carney's as they passed Scholl Street and noticed the crowd outside of Cheap Charlie's. Kids, said Neely contemptuously, jingling some coins in his pockets. Remember, Neely, when we used to go out selling junk? That was a long time ago. Yeah, agreed Francie. It was, in fact, 2 weeks since they had dragged their last haul to Carney's. Well, they're all grown up now. Oh, this cup? Yeah. It's a pretty neat cup. I'll wipe it out again, not drip tea on the book again, like I did the last time I showed the bottom of the cup. I think I've only used this like once or twice on stream ever. It looks like a weird bundt cake on the bottom. It's very thick and heavy. It's clay. And then it has this glaze inside, which is called a cake batter glaze. Excuse my snorting. Sorry, my nose got a little stuffy. Here we go. Yeah, so it's really interesting. I think this is technically a Chino glaze. So this is a kind of clay that has a lot of iron in it. So like when it's fired, iron particles come up out from the clay and they kind of interfere in the glaze like this. Kind of looks like a pumpkin on the bottom. Oh yeah. What I don't understand is like it's all uneven shaped. Like it's not even all the way around. And like if you were making a mold for this, wouldn't you just kind of make it the same all the way around? But it's pretty unique. I've worked in customer service long enough that I've seen at least customers and patrons do it. Okay. Kind of telling a story about themselves. I'm obsessed. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It is a little hard to drink out of because the lip is like so wide and it's different thicknesses around. So I kind of found the narrowest part right here is a little bit easiest to slurp out of. Okay, so yes, it's been 2 weeks since I stopped selling junk and they're all grown up now. They're like kids. Neely presented the flat package to Mama. For you and Francie, he said. Mama unwrapped it. It was a pound box of Loft's peanut brittle. And I didn't buy it out of my salary either, explained Neely mysteriously. They made Mama go into the bedroom for a minute. They arranged the 10 new bills on the table, then called Mama out. For you, Mama, said Francie with a grand wave of her hand. Oh my, said Mama, I can hardly believe it. And that's not all, said Neely. He took 80 cents in change from his pocket and placed it on the table. Tips for running errands fast, he explained. I saved them all week. There was more, but I bought the candy. Mama slid the change across the table to Neely. All the tips you make, you keep for spending money, she said. Just like Papa, thought Francie. Gee! Well, I'll give Francie a quarter out of it. No. Mama got a 50-cent piece from the cracked cup and gave it to Francie. That's Francie's spending money. 50 cents a week. Francie was pleased. She hadn't expected that much of an allowance. The children overwhelmed their mother with thanks. Katie looked at the candy and at the new bills and then at her children. She bit her lip, turned suddenly, and went into the bedroom, closing the door after her. Is she mad about something? Whispered Neely. No, said Francie. She's not mad. She just didn't want us to see her start crying. How do you know she's going to cry? 'Cause when she looked at the money, I saw that tears stood in her eyes. Get it? Francie's so clever. Okay. Another vegetable cracker. The light doesn't really do this justice. It looks a little bit better, the color in person, but maybe it was formed by hand. I'm just not sure. Okay. Sorry, I keep going forward, but yep, okay. Can definitely read one more chapter. Chapter 44. Francie had been working 2 weeks when the layoff came. The girls exchanged looks while the boss explained that it was just for a few days. A few days, 6 months long, explained Anastasia for Francie's information. The girls were going over to a Greenpoint factory, which needed hands for winter orders, poinsettias and artificial holly wreaths. When the layoff came there, they'd go on to another factory, and so on. They were Brooklyn migratory workers following seasonal work from one part of the borough to the other. They urged Francie to go along with them, but she wanted to try new work. She figured that since she had to work, she'd get variety in it by changing her job each chance she got. Then, like the sodas, she could say she had tried every work there was. Katie found an ad in the World that said a file clerk was wanted. Beginner considered, age 16, state religion. Francie bought a sheet of writing paper and an envelope for a penny and carefully wrote an application and addressed it to the ad's box number. Although she was only 14, she and her mother agreed that she could pass for 16 easily. So she said she was 16 in the letter. 2 days later, Francie received a reply on an exciting letterhead, a pair of shears lying on a folded newspaper, with a pot of paste nearby. It was from the Model Press Clipping Bureau on Canal Street, New York, and it asked Miss Nolan to report for an interview. Exciting. Sissy went shopping with Francie and helped her buy a grown-up dress and her first pair of high-heeled pumps. When she tried on her new outfit, Mama and Sissy swore that she looked like 16 except for her hair. Her braids made her look very kiddish. Mama, please let me get it bobbed, begged Francie. It took you 14 years to grow that hair, said Mama, and I'll not let you have it cut off. Gee, Mama, you're way behind the time. Why do you want short hair like a boy? It would be easier to care for. Taking care of her hair should be a woman's pleasure. But Katie, protested Sissy, all the girls are bobbing their hair nowadays. They're fools then. A woman's hair is her mystery. Daytimes, it's pinned up. But at night, alone with her man, the pins come out and it hangs loose like a shining cape. It makes her a special secret woman for the man. At night, all cats are gray, said Sissy wickedly. None of your remarks, said Katie sharply. I'd look just like Irene Castle if I had short hair, persisted Francie. They make Jew women cut off their hair when they marry so no other man will look at them. Nuns get their hair cut off to prove they're done with men. Why should any young girl do it when she doesn't have to? Francie was about to reply when Mama said, We'll have no more arguments. All right, said Francie, but when I'm 18, I'll be my own boss, then you'll see. When you're 18, you can shave your scalp for all I care. In the meantime, she wound Francie's 2 heavy braids around her head and pinned them in place with bone hairpins which she took from her own hair. There, she stepped back and surveyed her daughter. It looks just like a shining crown, she announced dramatically. It does make her look at least 18, conceded Sissy. Francie looked in the mirror. She was pleased that she looked so old the way Mama had fixed her hair, but she wouldn't give in and say so. All my life I'll have headaches carrying this load of hair around, she complained. Lucky you if that's all gives you a life of headaches, said Mama. Next morning, Neely escorted his sister to New York. As the train came onto the Williamsburg Bridge after leaving Marcy Avenue Station, Francie noticed that many people seated in the car rose as in if accord and then sat down again. Why do they do that, Neely? Just as you get on the bridge, there's a bank with a big clock. People stand up to look at the time so as they know whether they're early or late for work. I bet you 1 million people look at that clock every day, figured Neely. Francie had anticipated a thrill when she rode over that bridge for the first time, but the ride wasn't half as thrilling as wearing grown-up clothes for the first time. The interview was short. She was hired on trial. Hours 9 to 5:30, half an hour for lunch, salary $7 a week to start. First, the boss took her on a tour of inspection of the press clipping bureau. The 10 readers sat at long sloping desks. The newspapers of all the states were divided among them. The papers poured into the bureau every hour of every day from every city in every state of the union. The girls marked and boxed the items sought and put down their total and their own identifying number on the top of the front page. The marked papers were collected and brought to the printer, who had a hand press containing an adjustable date apparatus and racks of slugs before her. She adjusted the paper's date on her press, inserted the slug containing the name, city, and state of the newspaper, and printed as many slips as there were items marked. Then slips and newspaper went to the cutter, who stood before a large slanting desk and slashed out the marked items with a sharp curved knife. In spite of the letterhead, there wasn't a pair of shears on the premises. As the cutter slashed out the items, throwing the discarded paper to the floor, a sea of newspaper rose as high as her waist each 15 minutes. A man collected this waste paper and took it away for baling. The clipped items and slips were turned over to the paster, who affixed the clippings to the slips. Then they were filed, collected, and placed in envelopes and mailed. It's actually kind of fascinating. Francie got onto the filing system very easily. In 2 weeks, she had memorized the 2,000 or so names or headings on the file box. Then she was put into training as a reader. For 2 more weeks, she did nothing but study the client's cards, which were more detailed than the file box headings. When an informal examination proved that she had memorized the orders, she was given the Oklahoma papers to read. The boss went over her papers before they went to the cutter and pointed out her mistakes. When she got expert enough not to need checking, the Pennsylvania papers were added. Soon after, she was given the New York State papers and now had 3 states to read. By the end of August, she was reading more papers and marking more items than any other reader in the bureau. She was fresh to the work, anxious to please, had strong, clear eyes — she was the only reader not wearing glasses — and had developed a photographic eye very quickly. She could take in an item at a glance and note immediately whether it was something to mark. She read between 180 and 200 newspapers a day. The next best reader averaged from 100 to 110 papers. Yes, Francie was the fastest reader in the bureau and the poorest paid. Although she had been raised to $10 a week when she went on rating, her runner-up received $25 a week and the other readers received $20. Since Francie never became friendly enough with the girls to be taken into their confidence, she had no way of knowing how grossly underpaid she was. Although Francie liked reading newspapers and was proud to earn $10 a week, she was not happy. She had been excited about going to work in New York. Since such a tiny thing as a flower in a brown bowl at the library had thrilled her so, she expected that the great city of New York would thrill her 100 times more. But it was not so. The bridge had been the first disappointment. Looking at it from the roof of her house, she had thought that crossing it would make her feel like a gossamer-winged fairy flying through the air. But the actual ride over the bridge was no different than the ride above the Brooklyn streets. The bridge was paved in sidewalks and traffic roads just like the streets of Broadway, and the tracks were the same tracks. There was no different feeling about the train as it went over the bridge. New York was disappointing. The buildings were higher and the crowds thicker, otherwise it was little different from Brooklyn. From now on, would all new things be disappointing, she wondered? She had often studied the map of the United States and crossed its plains, mountains, deserts, and rivers in her imagination. and it had seemed a wonderful thing. Now she wondered whether she wouldn't be disappointed in that, too. Supposing she thought that she was to walk across this great country, she'd start out at 7 in the morning, say, and walk westward. She'd put one foot down in front of the other to cover distance, and as she walked to the west, she'd be so busy with her feet and with the realization that her footsteps were part of a chain that had started in Brooklyn that she might think nothing at all of the mountains, rivers, plains, and deserts she came upon. All she'd noticed was that some things were strange because they reminded her of Brooklyn, and that other things were strange because they were so different from Brooklyn. I guess there is nothing new then in the world, decided Francie unhappily. If there is anything new or different, some part of it must be in Brooklyn, and I must be used to it, and I wouldn't be able to notice if I came across it. Like Alexander the Great, Francie grieved, being convinced that there were no new worlds to conquer. She adapted herself to the split-second rhythm of the New Yorker going to and from work. Getting to the office was a nervous ordeal. If she arrived 1 minute before 9, she was a free person. If she arrived a minute after, she worried because that made her the logical scapegoat of the boss if he happened to be in a bad mood that day. So she learned ways of conserving bits of seconds. Long before the train ground to a stop at her station, she pushed her way to the door to be one of the first expelled when it slid open. Out of the train, she ran like a deer, circling the crowd to be the first up the stairs leading to the street. Walking to the office, she kept close to the building so she could turn corners sharply. She crossed street's kitty corner to save stepping off and on an extra pair of curbs. At the building, she shoved her way into the elevator even though the operator yelled, "Car's full!" And all this maneuvering to arrive 1 minute before instead of after 9. Once she left home 10 minutes earlier to have more time. In spite of no need of hurry, she still pushed her way out of the train, flew up the steps, rushed through the streets economically, and crowded into a full elevator. She was 15 minutes early. The big room was echoingly empty, and she felt desolate and lost. When the other workers rushed in seconds before 9, Francie felt like a traitor. The next morning, she slept 10 minutes longer and returned to her original timing. She was the only Brooklyn girl in the bureau. The others came from Manhattan, Hoboken, the Bronx, and one commuted from Bayonne, New Jersey. 2 of the oldest readers there, sisters, had originally come from Ohio. The first day Francie worked at the bureau, one of the sisters said to her, "You have a Brooklyn accent." It had sounded like a shocked accusation and made Francie self-conscious of her speech. She took to pronouncing words carefully, lest she say things like goyle for girl and appointment instead of appointment. There were but 2 people in the bureau to whom she could talk without embarrassment. One was the boss manager. He was a Harvard graduate, and in spite of a broad which he used indiscriminately, his speech was plain and his vocabulary less affected than those of the readers, most of whom had graduated from high school and had picked up an extensive vocabulary from years of reading. The other person was Miss Armstrong, who was the only other college graduate. Miss Armstrong was the special city reader. Her desk was isolated in the choicest corner of the room, where there was a north and an east window, the best light for reading. She read nothing but the Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia, and New York City newspapers. Oh, I love this job already. A special messenger brought her each edition of the New York City newspapers soon after it left the presses. When her papers were read up, she didn't have to pitch in, as the other readers did, and help the girls who were behind. She crocheted or manicured her nails while waiting for the next edition. She was the highest paid, receiving $30 a week. Miss Armstrong was a kindly person, and she took a helpful interest in Francie and tried to draw her out in conversation so that she wouldn't feel lonely. Once in the washroom, Francie overheard a remark about Miss Armstrong being the boss's mistress. Francie had heard of but never seen one of these fabulous beings. Immediately, she examined Miss Armstrong closely as a mistress. She saw that Miss Armstrong wasn't pretty. Her face was almost simian, with its wide mouth and flat, thick nostrils, and her figure was merely passable. Francie looked at her legs. They were long, slender, and exquisitely molded. She wore the sheerest of flawless silk stockings, and expensively made high-heeled pumps shod her beautifully arched feet. Beautiful legs, then, is the secret of being a mistress, concluded Francie. She looked down at her own long, thin legs. I'll never make it, I guess. Sighing, she resigned herself to a sinless life. This part is so cute. I love her energy. There was a class system in the Bureau engendered by the cutter, printer, paster, paper baler, and delivery boy. These workers, illiterate but sharp-witted, who for some reason called themselves the Club, assumed that the better educated readers looked down on them. In retaliation, they stirred up as much trouble as possible among the readers. Francie's loyalties were divided. By background and education, she belonged to the Club class, but by ability and intelligence, she belonged to the Readers class. The Club was shrewd enough to feel this division in Francie and tried to use her as a go-between. They informed her of troublemaking office rumors, expecting that she would relay them to the readers and create dissension. But Francie wasn't friendly enough with the readers to exchange gossip with them, and the rumors died with her. So one day when the cutter told her that Miss Armstrong was leaving in September and that she, Francie, was to be promoted to the city reader job, Francie assumed this to be a rumor invented to arouse jealousy among the readers, all of whom expected the city reading job when and if Miss Armstrong resigned. She thought it was preposterous that she, a girl of 14, with nothing but a grade school education, would be considered eligible to take over the work of a 30-year-old college graduate like Miss Armstrong. It was nearing the end of August, and Francie was worried because Mama hadn't mentioned anything about her going back to high school. She wanted desperately to go back to school. All the years of talk about higher education she had heard from her mother, grandmother, and aunts not only made her anxious to get more education, but gave her an inferiority complex about her present lack of education. She remembered with affection the girls who had written in her autograph book. She wanted to be one of them again. They came out of the same life as she did. They were no further along. Her natural place was going to school with them, not working competitively with older women. She didn't like working in New York. The crowds continually swarming about her made her tremble. She felt that she was being pushed into a way of life that she wasn't ready to handle. Remember, she was only 14, pretending to be 16. And the thing she dreaded worst about working in New York was the crowded L trains. There had been that time in the train when, hanging from a strap and so tightly wedged in the crowd that she couldn't do so much as lower her arm, she had felt a man's hand. No matter how she twisted and squirmed, she couldn't get away from that hand. When she swayed with the crowd as the cars swerved, the hand tightened. She was unable to twist her head to see whose hand it was. She stood in desperate futility, helplessly enduring the indignity. She could have called out and protested, but she was too ashamed to call public attention to her predicament. It seemed an eternity before the crowd thinned out enough for her to move to a different part of the car. After that, standing in a crowded train became a dreaded ordeal. One Sunday when she and Mama brought Lori over to see Grandma, Francie told Sissy about the man on the train, expecting that Sissy would comfort her. But her aunt treated it as a great joke. "So a man pinched you on the L," she said. "I wouldn't let that bother you. It means you're getting a good shape, and there are some men who can't resist a woman's shape. Say, I must be getting old. It's been years since anybody pinched me on the L. There was a time when I couldn't ride in a crowd without coming home black and blue," she said proudly. "Is that anything to brag about?" said Katie. Sissy ignored that remark. "The day will come, Francie," she said, "when you're 45 and have a shape like a bag of horse's oats tied in the middle." Sorry. I was picturing that. Oh, okay. Excuse me. Okay. Then you'll look back and long for the old days when men wanted to pinch you. If she does look back, said Katie, it will be because you put it in her mind and not because it's anything wonderful to remember. She turned to Francie. "As for you, learn to stand in the train without holding onto a strap. Keep your hands down and keep a long, sharp pin in your pocket. If you feel a man's hand on you, stick it good with the pin." Francie did as Mama said. She learned to keep her feet without holding to a strap. She kept her hand closed on a long, vicious pin in her coat pocket. She hoped someone would pinch her again. She just hoped so that she could stab him with the pin. It's all very well for Sissy to talk about shapes and men, but I don't like to be pinched in the back. And when I get to be 45, I certainly hope that I have something nicer to look back on and long for than being pinched by a stranger. Sissy ought to be ashamed. What's the matter with me, anyhow? Here I stand criticizing Sissy who's been so darn good to me. I'm dissatisfied with my job when I should feel lucky having such interesting work. Imagine getting paid to read when I like to read so much anyhow. And everyone thinks New York is the most wonderful city in the world, and I can't even get to like New York. Seems like I'm the most dissatisfied person in the whole world. Oh, I wish I was young again when everything seemed so wonderful. Again, she's 14 years old at this point. So jaded. No words. For some reason, I just pictured exactly what she said. The bag of oats, and anyway. Okay. Just before Labor Day, the boss called Francie into his private office and informed her that Miss Armstrong was leaving to be married. He cleared his throat and added that Miss Armstrong was marrying him, in fact. Francie's conception of a mistress broke and scattered. She had believed that men never married their mistresses, that they cast them aside like worn-out gloves. So Miss Armstrong was to become a wife instead of a worn-out glove. Well, so we'll need a new city reader, the boss was saying. Miss Armstrong herself suggested that we try you out, Miss Nolan. Francie's heart jumped. She, city reader, the most coveted job in the bureau. There had been truth then in the club's rumors. Another preconceived idea gone. She had always assumed that all rumors were false. The boss planned to offer her $15 a week, figuring he'd get as good a reader as his future wife was at half the salary. The girls should be tickled to death, too. A youngster like that, $15 a week? She said she was past 16. She looked 13. Of course, her age was none of his business as long as she was competent. The law couldn't touch him, hiring someone underage. All he'd have to say was that she deceived him as to her true age. There's a little raise along with the job, he said benignly. Francie smiled happily, and he worried. Have I put my foot in it, he thought? Maybe she didn't expect a raise. He covered his blunder hastily. A small raise after we see how you work out. I don't know, began Francie doubtfully. She's over 16, decided the boss, and she's going to hold me up for a big raise. To forestall her, he said, we'll give you $15 a week starting... He hesitated. No use being too good-natured. Starting the 1st of October. He leaned back in his chair, feeling as gracious as God himself. I mean, I don't think I'll be here much longer. She's working me for more money, he thought. Aloud, he asked, why not? I'm going back to school after Labor Day, I think. I meant to tell you as soon as my plans were settled. She's so cool. College? High school. I'll have to put Pinsky on City, he thought. She's getting 25 now. She'll expect 30, and I'm right back where I started. This Nolan is better than Pinsky, too. Damn Irma. Where does she get the idea that a woman shouldn't work after marriage? She could keep right on, keep the money in the family, buy a home with it. He spoke to Francie. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Not that I don't approve of higher education, but I consider newspaper reading a darn fine education. It's a good, live, ever-growing contemporary education. While in school, it's merely books. Dead books, he said contemptuously. I'll have to talk it over with my mother. By all means, tell her what your boss said about education and tell her what I said. He closed his eye and took the plunge. That will pay you $20 a week, starting the 1st of November. He shaved off a month. That's an awful lot of money, she said in all honesty. We believe in paying our workers well, so they stick with us. And, Miss Nolan, please don't mention your future salary. It's more than anyone else is getting, he lied, and if they found out... He spread his hands in a gesture of futility. You understand? No washroom gossip. Boy, some things never change, do they? Some things never change. Francie felt gracious as she set his mind at ease by assuring him that she'd never betray him in the washroom. The boss started to sign letters indicating that the interview was over. That's all, Miss Nolan, and we must have your decision the day after Labor Day. Yes, sir. $20 a week. Francie was stunned. 2 months ago, she was glad to earn $5 a week. Uncle Willie only earned $18 a week, and he was $40. Sissy's John was smart and earned but $22.50 a week. Few men in her neighborhood earned as much as $20 a week, and they had families too. With that money, our troubles would be over, thought Francie. We could pay rent on a 3-room flat somewhere. Mama wouldn't have to go out to work, and Lori wouldn't be left alone so much. I guess I'd be mighty important if I could manage something like that. But I want to go back to school. She recalled the constant harping on education in the family. Grandma, it will raise you up on the face of the earth. Evie, each of my 3 children will get 3 diplomas. Sissy, and when mother goes, pray God not for a long time yet, and baby is big enough to start kindergarten, I'm going out to work again. And I'll bank my pay, and when little Sissy grows up, I'll put her in the best college there is. Mama, and I don't want my children to have the same hard-working life I have. Education will fix it so their lives are easier. Still, it's such a good job, thought Francie. That is, good right now. But my eyes will get worn out from the work. All the older readers have to wear glasses. Miss Armstrong said a reader's only good as long as her eyes hold out. Those other readers were fast, too, when they first started, like me, but now their eyes? I must save my eyes, not read away from the job. If Mama knew I could get 20 a week, maybe she wouldn't send me back to school, and I couldn't blame her. We've been poor for so long. Mama is very fair in all things, but this money might make her see things in a different way, and it wouldn't be her fault. I won't tell her about the raise until after she decides about school. Sip. They sure don't. Yeah. That also seems like one of those moments when someone tells me something and says, don't tell anyone but, and then I immediately tell Serial. Like, if you don't want me to tell my wife, do not tell me. Yeah, I was referring to the whole, like, no, don't talk amongst yourself about your pay thing. That employers don't want you that, so that you don't find out that you're underpaid, that they're paying other people more. Don't discuss that. I don't think it's against the law, but it's highly discouraged, right? Some things never change. Okay. Let's see where we're at. Just a little bit more, a few more pages, I think. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm going to stop making the tea because I'm just, like, full. Francie spoke to Mama about school, and Mama said yes, they'd have to talk about it. They'd talk about it right after supper that night. After finishing their supper coffee, Katie announced needlessly, since everybody knew it, that school was opening next week. I want both of you to go to high school, but it's working out that only one of you can start this fall. I'm saving every cent I can out of your pay so that next year both of you will be back in school. She waited. She waited a long time. Neither of the children answered. Well, don't you want to go to high school? Francie's lips were stiff as she spoke. So much depended on Mama, and Francie wanted her words to make a good impression. Yes, Mama. I want to go back to school more than I'll ever want anything in my life. I don't want to go, said Neely. Don't make me go back to school. Mama, I like to work and I'm going to get a $2 raise the first of the year. Don't you want to be a doctor? No, I want to be a broker and make lots of money like my bosses. I'll get onto the stock market and make $1 million someday. My son will be a great doctor. How do you know? I might turn out like Dr. Hewler on Mauder Street with an office in a basement flat and always wear a dirty shirt like him. Anyhow, I know enough. I don't need to go back to school. Neely doesn't want to go back to school, said Katie. She spoke to Francie almost pleadingly. You know what that means, Francie? Francie bit her lip. It wouldn't do to cry. She must keep calm. She must keep thinking clearly. It means, said Mama, that Neely has to go back to school. I won't, cried Neely. I won't go back no matter what you say. I'm working and earning money and I want to keep on. I'm somebody now with the fellers. If I go back to school, I'm just a punk kid again. Besides, you need my money, Mama. We don't want to be poor again. You'll go back to school, announced Katie quietly. Francie's money will be enough. Why did you make him go when he doesn't want to, cried Francie, and keep me out of school when I want to go so much? Yeah, agreed Neely. Because if I don't make him, he'll never go back, said Mama, where you, Francie, will fight and manage to get back somehow. Why are you so sure all the time, protested Francie. In a year, I'll be too old to go back. Neely's only 13. He'll still be young enough next year. Nonsense, you'll only be 15 next fall. 17, corrected Francie, going on 18. Too old to start. What kind of silly talk is that? Not silly. On the job, I'm 16. I have to look and act 16 instead of 14. Next year, I'll be 15 in years, but 2 years older in the way I'm living. Too old to change back into a schoolgirl. Neely will go back to school next week, said Katie stubbornly, and Francie will go back next year. I hate both of you, shouted Neely, and if you make me go back, I'll run away from home. Yes, I will. He ran out, slamming the door. Katie's face set in lines of misery, and Francie felt sorry for her. Don't worry, Mama, he won't run away. He just said that. The instant relief that came into her mother's face angered Francie. But I'm the one who'll go away, and I won't make a speech about it. When the time comes that you don't need what I earn, I'll leave. What's gotten into my children who used to be so good? Asked Katie poignantly. Years have gotten into us. Katie looked puzzled. Francie explained, we never did get working papers. But they were hard to get. The priest wanted $1 for each baptismal certificate, and I would have had to go to City Hall with you. I was nursing Lori every 2 hours then, and I couldn't go. We all figured it was easier for you both to claim to be 16 and not have all the fuss. That part was all right, but saying we were 16, we had to be 16, and you treat us like 13-year-old children. I wish your father were here. He understood things about you that I can't get to understand. Pain stabbed through Francie. After it passed, she told her mother that her salary was to be doubled on November 1st. $20! Katie's mouth fell open in surprise. Oh my! That was her usual expression when anything astonished her. When did you know? Saturday. And you didn't tell me until now? No. You thought that if I knew that, it would fix my mind about you keeping on working. Yes. But I didn't know when I said it was right for Neely to go back to school. You can see that I did what I thought was right and the money didn't come into it. Can't you see? She asked pleadingly. No, I can't see. I can only see that you favor Neely more than me. You fix everything for him and tell me that I can find a way myself. Someday I'll fool you, Mama. I'll do what I think is right for me, and it might not be right in your way. I'm not worrying because I know that I can trust my daughter. Katie spoke with such simple dignity that Francie was ashamed of herself. And I trust my son. He's mad now about doing what he doesn't want to do, but he'll get over it and do well in school. Neely's a good boy. Yes, he's a good boy, conceded Francie, but even if he was bad, you wouldn't notice it. But where I'm concerned, her voice went ragged on a sob. Katie sighed sharply but said nothing. She got up and started to clear the table. Her hand reached for a cup, and Francie, for the first time in her life, saw her mother's hand fumble. It trembled and couldn't connect with the cup. Francie put the cup in her mother's hand. She noticed a big crack in the cup. Our family used to be like a strong cup, thought Francie. It was whole and sound and held things well. When Papa died, the first crack came. And this fight tonight made another crack. Soon there will be so many cracks that the cup will break, and we'll all be pieces instead of a whole thing together. I don't want this to happen, yet I'm deliberately making a deep crack. Her sharp sigh was just like Katie's. The mother went to the wash basket in which the baby was sleeping peacefully in spite of the bitter talking. Francie saw her mother's still fumbling hands take the sleeping child from the basket. Katie sat in her rocker near the window, held her baby tightly, and rocked. Francie almost went blind with pity. I shouldn't be so mean to her, she thought. What has she ever had but hard work and trouble? Now she has to turn to her baby for comfort. Maybe she's thinking that Lori, whom she loves so, and who is so dependent on her now, will grow up to turn against her like I'm doing now. She put her hand awkwardly on her mother's cheek. It's all right, Mama. I didn't mean it. You're right, and I'll do as you say. Neely must go to school, and you and I will see that he gets through. Katie put her hand over Francie's. That's my good girl, she said. Don't be mad at me, Mama, because I fought you. You yourself taught me to fight for what I thought was right, and I thought I was right. I know, and I'm pleased that you can and will fight for what you should have. And you'll always come out all right, no matter what. You're like me that way. And that's where the whole trouble is, thought Francie. We're too much alike to understand each other, because we don't even understand our own selves. Papa and I were two different persons, and we understood each other. Mama understands Neely because he's different from her. I wish I was different in the way that Neely is. Then everything's all right now between us? Katie asked with a smile. Of course, Francie smiled back and kissed her mother's cheek. But in their secret hearts, each knew that it wasn't all right and would never be all right between them again. Oh, thanks, everyone. See you next week. Take care, take care. Bye-bye.